Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody ready? Pretty hit it.
Outside, we don't have behind them, sir.
A couple of minutes. He's not up there.
No.
I mean, Leo's not back here.
Slow. Yeah. Make a note for the next time. I forgot to make a note of it before we sent you his original. I do too. It's learning when that monitor is on, we're across.
You ready?
We're going for. It's coming out. I would do right if we don't. I can put my father get through prayer and all that stuff.
Okay. We now call the February the 6th, 2023 meeting of the Vance County Board of Commissioners to order. First on our agenda, we will have the invocation by Pastor Carolyn Roy from Plank Chapel United Methodist Church. Good evening.
Good evening. Let us pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for the gift of this day, for the gift of this land, the gift of the servants who say they will come and serve in the ways that you call them to serve, whether it's on boards or as citizens coming to speak to you and coming to speak to them and asking that you give them the wisdom and the will to do what is right for this county. Because Lord, the world needs those who stand firmly in places of authority to do that which brings us into health, into wholeness, and a community restored and refurbished. So Lord, we thank you for the gift of those who say yes this day and are here this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Next, we generally would have public comments. We had a sign up sheet, but no one has signed up for public comments. So the next on our agenda, we have an appointment to Clark Frankie Nobles, the Employment Engagement Team.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be back this month. Giving out an award and not receiving one. Somebody tricked me on that. I got a couple people in mind. This month employee of the month is Mr. Bailey Schaefer with the Veteran Services. Of course, Nicole had this to say about him since there was only a couple of them there. Bailey is willing to learn and complete any duties to make serving veterans a top priority. Bailey will attempt to solve a problem and present a solution to his supervisor. Bailey doesn't like being late, and he always attempts to be on time. Bailey goes above and beyond his required duties to assist veterans and his supervisor mentally or physically. Also, if needed, he will assist with maintenance duties Bailey is never too proud to do anything outside of his required duties. I'm gonna let Nicola come up and we get Mr. Bailey up here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I would like to thank the commissioners, Jordan, Greta, and Frankie, for this opportunity to recognize Bailey Schaefer as the Employee of the Month. And I'll tell anybody that Bailey is a godsend. He is a wonderful person to work with. He loves the Lord, and he's also there always, every day. He's excited and joyful about his job. And he intends to do the very best that he can. He's always professional in everything that he does. And Bailey deserves this recognition and more. And I look forward to working with him many years from now. Thank you. I would can I say something else? I would like to thank Bailey's family for coming for this special occasion. And also my husband and son, John and Christian, and AJ, who's one of the greatest veteran service technician in Granville County. So he's here along with his wife, Corey. So we want to thank all of them for coming for this occasion. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the one's one. Mine's one.
It might be, but right there it won't be, that's fine. Wow. And also.
You might.
Next on our agenda is a public hearing. The Vance County Board of Commissioners are conducting a fiscal year 2023 to 2024 pre-budget public hearing. This the February 6, 2023 hearing We are conducting this in the Commissioners' Meeting Room, 122 Young Street, and the purpose of this budget hearing is to allow the public who have any comments concerning the fiscal year budget 2023 to 2024, who have any comments, the ability now to come forward and present any comments to the board in which you wish to express at this time. So if there's anyone out there that wishes to address the budget that I have just identified, please feel free to identify yourselves and as you come forward. So I'll ask now, is there anyone present today who would like to make any comments at this public hearing? It's just no one that has identified themselves as wishing to express their comments. Are there any commissioners that want to make any comments? So that being said, we will close the public hearing for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 budget. Next, we are going to hear from Stewart Hill, Thompson, Price, Scott, Adams and Company concerning our 2021 to 2022 audit report. They're going to do a presentation.
Should have a copy of the presentation in front of you. It looks like this. Stewart had to be at another county meeting tonight. My name's Alan Thompson. I'm the managing partner of the firm. If you'd be kind enough to flip over to page 1. The main thing you hire an outside audit firm to do is issue an opinion on the financial statements as a whole. We issued an unmodified report, which is a quote unquote clean report or highest level of report. There are some findings that we'll talk about. And so on page 1, where it's got significant audit findings, we didn't consider them significant, but we did have to list them, and I'll discuss those in just a moment. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, no uncorrected misstatements on page 2, no disagreements with management. Management did provide us with a representation letter dated December 30th. One aware that management consulted the outside accountants, auditors, etc. under findings and issues. Not listed here, but there's some technical findings in Medicaid, which almost every county we audit has technical findings. What you're looking for is there's no question cost. There were no question costs as it related to that. There were some year-end adjustments that we had to make once we got the final trial balance, and there were some budget amendments that need to be posted correctly, and a couple of items that were overspent in the budget. If you'd be kind enough to flip over to page 4. I don't say these are all the key numbers in the audit report, but hopefully these are some of the key numbers in the audit report. And we try to put put those numbers on the first column and then put the 4 prior years audit reports next to it so that you get some kind of context and not just have a quote unquote number out in space without any relationship to where prior numbers were, etc. So you can see total fund balance there in your general fund is 27,523,000. If you would go back to 2018, you see there was 22,552,000. Unavailable fund balance is 4,421,000. Restricted, committed, and assigned at 7,409,000. General fund expenditures 54,517,000. And then the fund balance as a percentage of fund expenditures is 42.38. And then unassigned fund balance is 20,114,000, and unassigned fund balance as a percentage is 36.9. The revenues over and under expenses before other financing sources and transfers is 5,492,000. So one reason why you got a 5,492,000 increase, when you look up at the top and you only see you see a significantly lower number increase in your fund balance from 21 to 22, is there was a big, I think it's $5,250,000 transfer over to your capital projects fund from the general fund, and that caused it. That's outside of this 5,492,000 number. Water fund is a negative 155,136. Solid waste fund had a positive 238,529. You see your cash and accumulated depreciation there from your water fund, and then cash and fund balance / net position next. And you can see the 24,495,000 in your general fund. And then cash in your water fund is 1,628,000. Try to make sure we always think of this because water funds are proprietary funds / enterprise funds. We're not really looking at net position like we would in general fund. What we're looking for there is positive cash flow. So if the enterprise fund, in this case, your water fund or solid waste, what we're trying to find out is, do they have positive cash flow? And sometimes that negative cash flow can be a result of asset acquisition or large debt payments, et cetera. But from an operating standpoint, you want positive cash flow. See, the water fund had $1,628,000 in cash, solid waste, $169,000, cash, other governmentals is $24,208,000. But I always say this too, other governmental funds can include projects. And depending on where the project is, the cash or fund balance in other governmentals can vary significantly. So what you're really looking for is you have to dig deep enough in there to determine what the status of it is. I really say don't read a whole lot into the cash or fund balance in other governmentals. The main focus should be on your proprietary funds and your general fund. You see fund balance again, your general fund, 27,523,000. Your net position in your water funds, 4,740,000. Solid waste is 676,000. Other governmentals is 15,621,000. And you see your property tax rates, which were the same across the 5 years, and then collection percentage, I believe it's the highest of any of the 5 years at 97.73%. And you see your total property valuation and levy amounts next. You'd be kind enough to flip over to page 5. The top there shows your debt at 34,664,000. And then it shows a breakdown by department of your general fund revenues, which totals 53,642,000, and your general fund expenditures at 48,150,000. If you'd be kind enough to flip over to page 6. At the top of that page, you can see your total fund balance in blue, your restricted and committed and assigned in red. And on the bottom of that page, you can see the fund balance available as a percentage. And the dip there has mostly to do with the 5,250,000 transfer that I referred to earlier. On page 7, you see analysis of unassigned fund balance as a percentage at 36.9. And then on the bottom, you see your revenues over non-expenses before transfers with general fund and solid waste being positive, with the water fund having a slight negative there. On page 8, you see pie charts at the top for both cash balances and fund balances, with the respective totals underneath that, and total cash being 50,502,000 and total fund balances being 48,562,000. On the page 9, you see your property tax rates and your group weighted average on the top, and the collection percentage and the group weighted average on the bottom. Going forward, we probably won't use group weighted averages unless we can figure out an easy way to do it ourselves. The LGC decided they wanted to do group weighted average, everybody above 100 million in total budget for the general fund and everybody below. So it doesn't really provide a good comparable going forward. So we'll probably pull those out in the future. The debt analysis on page 10, you can see governmental installment purchases being the largest there at 66%, 22,722,000. And then if you were to flip over to page 11, you see the ad valorem taxes make up the majority of the general fund revenue at 48.62, with local option sales tax being the next at 24.55%. On the bottom, you see your general fund expenditures, with public safety being number 1 at 32.31%. And then education, human services making up the next 2, with human services being 24.76 and education at 21.39%. A couple of years ago, June 30, 2021, the LGC decided not to send out unit letters anymore. Unit letters being, if you've been on the board a while, you've probably got some of those. So they came up with templates and basically said, we want the auditors to do any presentation of unit issues that we may have. And so then you respond back to the LGC the same way you used to with a unit letter within 60 days from tonight for the data presentation. And that's what page 12 and 13 refer to. is any of the findings that are there, the budget violation, the prior period adjustment, reconciliation of records. Happy to help assist in any of those responses, look at those. But those are the findings we had in terms of specifics. The audit, the numbers look good, and you got an unmodified report, which is a quote, clean report, the highest level of reporting. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got of me tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions anytime you've got a question. You can call the office. If I happen not to be there, ask for my cell number and I'll get you an answer. Yes, sir.
We used to years ago get this audit, say November.
Yes, sir.
Seems to me it's getting further out. Is that the cause of the fact it's more complicated or because of the state put more restrictions or what reasoning do we have for that happening?
The biggest problem most units had this year, and your unit was one of them. There was a statement came out called GASB 87, had to do with leases. Most units had to contract with an outside agency to meet that standard. I'm not sure it really helps anything, but it's called Debt Book. They go through, compute all your data to get there. I think they finally finished in December 7th, if my memory's right. I went back and took a quick look. That puts almost everybody back because there's not but a few agencies out there since this was the first year that actually went through. The LGC did have a template out there, but it was a very complex template. You're going to face another standard this year called package software. I think it's GASB statement 96 or 97. Somebody's going to have to come in and do similar stuff. I'm sure it adds value to the statement, but because I'm not trying to be negative about my own profession and the value, but the board management of the county managed from state statute, general fund budgets, as you had a hearing on an annual basis, and you do your own strategic planning. If you were to go back many years ago, there was a statement called GASB 34 that is put in government-wide statements, which takes your general fund and converts it to a business type activity. Nobody manages from that statement. In fact, those counties who have tons of school debt can have a very positive, in fact, I presented one this morning, a very, very high fund balance, but their government-wide net position is negative because they don't record any of the fixed assets of the schools on their books, but they recorded $200 or $300 million worth of school debt on their government-wide statements. So the usefulness of some of the standards is not what you as a user would want. I would say that, and maybe more for bond users, bond issuers, maybe I should say, than for the end user you to actually get the most out of your audit report or financial statements.
Bottom line is it's not going to get any better.
No, sir, it's not.
Just going.
Yes, sir, I did. I'm sorry about that too.
I got the message.
Is there anything we can do to prepare for the 87 so that we don't have that issue next year?
I think last year helped a lot of folks get to that point. The problem is when Debt Book came out, which was one of the sources that you could use, they were overwhelmed to some degree. So I think all that's kind of in a better spot. We should be back, hopefully on track with a lot of folks, including Vance County, to get closer to that November or the first meeting in December next year with what I would anticipate.
So is our late date of filing with the local government commission the only exception that we'll need to respond to with the chart?
No, there's a couple others in there. That there was a budget violation and a prior period adjustment. that
So
you
the
have to-
22, 01, 02, and 03
Yes, sir.
are all a part of that.
Yes, sir.
Is that because of some different auditing procedures that you did this year that are different from previous years?
Not really, sir. GASB 87 can be a result of your, going back to usefulness, but GASB 87 required some entries that, I'd hate put percentages, but probably 80% of our units had a GASB 87 budget issue. So that's, LGC initially said it's not an issue, then they came back and said it is an issue. So I can't help some of that. Sorry about that. So some of this is transition in that, and it will get better, is what I would tell you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I got one question here. On page 4. Yeah. Page 4. On page 4,
Yes, sir.
for 4 straight years, the total property valuation for this county has gone up, except last year it went down. Why did it go down last year?
We've included in this report, the fire department's total valuation and in the levy amount. We pulled it out for 2022. It didn't affect the taxes you collected or the total valuation for that. We just wanted that out so that it better represented only the county and not the fire departments.
So in previous years, it represented the fire department. Is that what you're telling me?
I am, but it didn't affect the money the county got or the money the fire departments got. It was just on this report.
It's not an apples to apples comparison is what he's saying.
That's right.
It's a totally different number, and that number from 2021 should probably be a different number. It shouldn't be 2.9 million. Yeah, it shouldn't include the fire tax.
That's correct. And if you'd like, I can go back for this report purposes and pull that out so you get a better feel for that.
The property valuation is the value of all property in the county.
It is, yes, sir.
That's what it is, isn't it?
It is, but in this case, you have a fire tax that's added on top of the county tax. And that valuation got counted twice in this report. And that's what I'm saying. I pulled it out for 2022, so it only reflect the county's amount.
And in previous years, it counted more than the county.
I counted the county valuation. And then the property tax value for the fire departments had got included on that amount.
It's incorrect for 2021.
So what is that number that you deducted this year?
I'm sorry, I didn't
How
understand.
much did you deduct this year?
I'd have to look to know that answer, but I can get you that answer.
Because I know we grew this year. I mean, our tax basis grew. This demonstrates that it didn't. And so by adjusting
What
that
bothers
number,
me, it demonstrates that the valuation of all property in the county has gone down.
Right, and we discussed that prior to this, and I said, I'm not going to show a different number than I've presented in a prior year or wouldn't, and that's why I can pull that out and show you the difference.
If I can pull the last 5 years and show. Go back the last 5 years and show fire tax county, so y'all can see the difference.
And see
Well,
the
and we'll
increase
set
over that 5 years, as you're saying.
So you can see a proper growth.
it doesn't to the revenue numbers,
No.
but it does as far as us tracking what our growth is in our tax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This appears like there's no growth going on. That's what's bothering me, this number.
And we'll get those new numbers.
Feels like for the first time in 5 years, the county's total property valuation is going down. But you're telling me that's not the case. He's telling me that's not the case. You're telling me that's not the case. These numbers don't tell me that's not.
You're correct.
Well, it was, okay, you guys work it out. Okay, can I ask you something? How many? Answer my question, please. I'm sorry, do what? Let him answer my question, please. Yeah, go ahead, you're welcome. You welcome, yes, sir.
Put my answer here.
Don't put your mic on.
I'm new to this, so excuse
The
me.
button, the red light will come on.
Why wasn't it adjusted before we got it?
It was included in last year's report. I did talk to Catherine. I said, I don't want to change what you saw last year in case somebody took it back and said, what's the difference? What I probably should have done so that it was clear is left the numbers as they are and did just what I think this gentleman said, showed total property valuation for the county, for the fire department, and then a combined number so that you see the growth in each going forward. And that's what I was saying. I'll get you those numbers either tomorrow or Wednesday when I get back in the office. I'll send them to each of you or send them to Catherine and she can email them to you, or I can email them directly to you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm done.
How many counties are you auditing now, your firm auditing?
I think we do 19 out of my office.
There's 19 that you do. How many, tier one counties? Approximately, I know you can't answer.
I don't know that answer.
Do you ever do any comparison ratios of tier one counties? Maybe not listing the county, so that we have some reflection of how we stand versus other counties, or you do it by budget, or you do anything at all?
We have, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. The LGC has traditionally done this group weighted average, and they do it by 10 counties apiece. So you could get a significant amount of data from that group weighted average. And when they stopped for 2022, they stopped doing that group weighted average. So we will probably start doing something for that, because if I had to guess, 50% of our counties are tier one counties.
50% of your counties are tier one counties. It looks like to me, if you could compare some ratios, so that we could see where we stand and what things we need to work on as a county, how we stood, will give us some kind of reflection when we go into budget time. That's possible.
Yes, sir.
I have a general question. How long have we been a tier one?
Since they established it.
Ever? I mean, we've been a tier one forever.
Mhm.
But that would that would really, really help in the future when you do budgets about what things to work on and what things you need to look at.
If you look at the actual ad valorem tax revenues, we had about almost a $300,000 increase in tax revenues this year, which indicates that our collections were up and that we did grow. And so that number translates into what, almost 3 million, less short of $3 million.
As a plus.
I can get you that. Thank you. It might take me a few days to accumulate it, but I can get you that for those numbers. And if you have specific things you want me to look at, happy to cater that report for what y'all are looking for budget purposes.
I'd like to know fund balance, and I'd like to know what the percentage of what's being collected in other counties, and I'd like to know what they're doing about fire tax. I'd like to know a lot of those things. Especially if you're in tier one county. And what their total budgets are.
Could you repeat that?
And the other thing that I'd probably like to know is what the total assets that can be taxed are, like in ours, I think it's around 3 billion. I'm not mistaken.
Could you say that again? Tell me what you want to know.
Sir,
Could you say again what you want to know, what you're asking him?
I'm sorry, could you,
We didn't hear what.
We
you
can't
asked.
hear, you're not speaking in the microphone. We can't hear you.
I apologize. Sorry. I wanted to know what the total revenue is for income as far as the county is concerned. I think ours is around $3 billion, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to know what the fund balance is of the other counties that are tier one. I'd like to know what the collection rate is in the other counties as far as that's concerned totally, so we could look at that, our collection rate and where we stand on that. And I'd like to know what we're doing in other counties as far as the fire tax and different things, so we know what we're doing on those things. And that's just general information. And how much they're putting in economic development in tier one counties and what they're doing.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we receive the budget.
Second.
Commissioner Brummett has moved that we accept the budget. It has been seconded by Commissioner um, Hester. Does anyone have any comment? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. The budget is now, well, the audit is now approved by the Vance County Board of Commissioners.
Madam Chair, that's approved with the changes he's gonna make, right?
It's received. All we did is we received it. We acknowledged- we received the budget.
Oh,
We use it for data when we get.
there were some requests made by Commissioner Hester, and we assume that those that information will be provided for the board in a timely manner, and we look forward to receiving that information. Next on our agenda, we have our tax administrator, Portia Brooks. There's two issues she will discuss. First, we will address the untimely exemptions.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You've seen your packet. We have two untimely elderly exemptions. The first one is David and Hazel Foster of 243 Yolen Road. And the other one is Stephen Skipwith of 817 Dick Things Road. And both of these applications was turned in late, but if they would have been turned in on time, they would have met the qualification. So I ask that you approve.
Madam Chair, I move we approve these exemptions.
The motion made that we approve the exemptions by Commissioner Brummett, seconded by Commissioner Faines. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously, we have approved that we accept the applications. So those entirely exemptions have been accepted.
Okay, and last one is the 2022 appeal that came before you on November 7th. After receiving the appraisal from Mr. and Mrs. Robinson at our last meeting, we sat down with the Robinsons, and I also called and talked with the appraiser. And after talking with her and looking through the appraiser and fixing some things that she had in hers, going over that. And speaking with the Corps of Engineers about the slope and the elevation on the lake and what they can do and cannot do on the government property. And after sitting down, talking with them, we came up with the value of $663,355. It was $875,494. So my recommendation tonight is that you accept the appraisal, the value of $663,355.
Second.
A recommendation has been made by Ms. Brooks from the Tax Administration Office based on a thorough examination of all documentation that was provided by the taxpayer. An agreement has been made between the taxpayer and the county. Motion now has been made by Commissioner Faines. And
Madam Chair, if the Robinsons would like, would it be appropriate for them to speak at this time before we have a vote?
okay, would you like to have any comments? And we want to thank you for being patient, as this process progressed. I know it can be stressful. And, there was issues about the timeliness of it. And I hope it's to everybody's satisfaction has been resolved. Again, we had a motion by Commissioner Faines. It was seconded by Commissioner Hester. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the agreement between the tax office, Vance County, and the taxpayer, has been, considered, and it has, we acknowledge an agreement has been made and it's approved by the Vance County Board of Commissioners. And next on the agenda, we have Ryan Vincent from Vincent Valuations.
Talk about everybody's second favorite thing from audit is reappraisal.
Good evening, Mr. Vincent.
So thank you guys for having me tonight. My name is Ryan Vincent with Vincent Evaluations. Have two of my guys here who've been working here in the county for a while. You might have seen them knocking on your doors. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit about reappraisal, what it is, why we're doing it. We're going to talk about where we're at, and we're going to talk about what the next year is going to look like for us going forward. So reappraisal is a process in which we go through and we revalue all the property in the county at current market value. So market value is defined as what a willing buyer and a willing seller would pay in the marketplace. When we assess property, we're assessing the land and any improvements permanently affixed to it. So state law tells us that we have to do this at least once every 8 years. Department of Revenue has recommended shorter cycles to counties, but that's up to the board as to the cycle. Our Vance County, your reappraisal is a 2024 reappraisal. And what it does is it distributes the tax burden equally amongst property owners based on what they have or the value of their property. So for example, values could change. Let's say the values on the lake go up faster than the values off the lake. Over time, you get discrepancies in market value. So what a reappraisal does is it equalizes those values with what buyers and sellers are paying in the marketplace. So again, what is market value? It's the most probable price that a willing buyer and a willing seller would pay for a piece of property. One thing that's important to remember is that in the tax office, we do not create market value. We're simply taking a snapshot of what market value is as of that January 1st, 2024 day. The market value is set by the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace. So again, our reappraisal is scheduled for January 1st, 2024. We expect the new tax bills to go out with the new values in the summer of 24. And we plan to mail notices to all property owners with their new tax values sometime in the early part of 2024. So we have three basic steps to a reappraisal. First one, which we're wrapping up right now here in the next 2 months, is the collection of the physical characteristics. So, excuse me, in Vance County, we're doing what we call a full measure and list. So we're going out, knocking on the doors, and if anybody's home, we're asking them a few questions about the home, and then measuring all of the structures on the property, and also taking photos of all of the structures on the property. That information then gets brought into the office, gets entered into the computer, and we start our sales analysis, which is where we start breaking down the sales and looking at what are people paying in certain areas for land, what are people paying for certain types of houses. And from there, we develop valuation models, which we call the schedule of values. And that's how we apply what's happening in the sales market to all of the other properties in the county that did not sell. So again, when we go to a property, we measure everything, assuming there's no dogs, gates, we're not asked to leave, things like that. That happens every single day. We measure the footprint of the house, and we measure any additions to the house. We also look at things such as quality, condition, siding type, roof type, if the house has a basement, if that basement's finished or not. We check the outbuildings to make sure that we have those coded properly and those are measured correctly. A couple of things that are difficult for us when we're out there, because again, we don't go inside anyone's houses. Basements are sometimes difficult. We don't know if they're finished or unfinished. If a house has, let's say it's a two-story house and it has open cathedral ceilings that go all the way to the second floor. And so it might look like a two-story from the outside, but parts of it are really only one story with really tall ceilings. Also, if something has an unusual floor plan, that's stuff we don't usually know about until the appeal process, if somebody brings that forth to us. So we appraise properties this way because in Vance County, there's approximately 26,000 properties, and we are responsible for appraising them all as of one particular day. Most taxing jurisdictions across the country do this, the same methods, the same methodology called mass appraisal. And there's no practical way for us to go through and appraise all these properties the way that a fee appraiser would, one at a time. That would just take too much time. So we use, again, industry standard methods to complete these mass appraisals. So where are we at right now? We began visiting properties in the field in early 2022. We're getting ready to wrap that up. Right now, we've measured about 19,000. I created this slideshow about a week and a half ago, so I've already done about another, I think, 1,200 or 1,500 since then. So we're a little over 20,000 properties have been visited. We have about 6,000 or so left to visit. We expect to finish that late March, early April of this year to finish the field visits. Everything remaining is within the Henderson Township. We've done all the properties on the outside, all around the county. We're finishing Henderson last. And so far from our data entry side, we've entered about 14,000 of those right now into the computer. So these are examples of some photos we take when we go to properties. So all the properties will have updated photos. So some next steps, we have to go through and delineate neighborhoods throughout the county. So we're in the process of completing that. We have to go through and look at, again, all the sales and develop our land valuation models and our improvement valuation models. That's upcoming this year. And then what we do is we go through and we do a parcel by parcel review. We look at all the sales in the neighborhood and we compare those sale prices with what sold, and then we compare those to the properties that didn't sell, make adjustments accordingly, and that's how we get our values. What the board should look forward to is in the fall, we're going to present a schedule of values, it's called. That's our rates and tables. So we'll have to present it, we'll have a public hearing, and then we'll ask the board to adopt that schedule. And that will come in the fall. So a couple ways to wrap up here that we check what we're doing. We have statistical tools that we look at. We look at sales ratio reports. What that does is it compares the value that we have, the new tax value that we have on a property that's sold against the sale price. So state law tells us that we have to assess properties as close to 100% of market value as possible. Meaning if a house sold for $200,000, our new tax value should be as close to 200,000 as possible. And that would be a 100% sale ratio. Now, when your sales ratio changes over time, could go up or it could go down. That can affect certain things. It can affect your rate the public utilities pay to you in taxes. That's the major thing that would affect budgets from a sales ratio standpoint. So a couple things to talk about appraised values versus tax rates. So there's those two components go into the tax bill. In the tax office, we're responsible for the appraised value. County board, the town boards, the fire districts are responsible for the tax rates. And those two combined generate the tax bill for the owners of the property. And lastly, we're going to cover this really quickly, but once the notices go out, we're going to have an appeals process. Everybody has the right to appeal their property. I believe you just heard the end of an appeal. So the first thing we ask folks to do when they file an appeal for reappraisal is review your property. So make sure that we have the bedroom count correct, the bathrooms, the square footage correct, make sure everything looks correct from a data standpoint first. Then we ask folks to go and compare their property value to what other similar properties sold for. And going forward, we'll work with the county to try to put the sales online. It might be on a map, but something that the citizens can go on and they can look at all of these sales so they can have access to the data that we have access to. And if they look and they still feel there's discrepancies between what similar homes or land are selling for and what their property is valued at, then we ask them to go ahead and file an appeal. A couple of things with appeals. We're looking some reasons that are not necessarily valid reasons to file a property tax appeal is the amount of change from the last reappraisal. That's not a reason to file a tax appeal. Affordability of the expected taxes. So we know that that's a major issue. There are programs that are administered through the tax office to help folks with their tax bill. Elderly and disabled exemptions. There's farm use deferments that you could apply for. And also a reason not appeal is the level of services provided by your local government. So what we look for in, I don't know what happened there. Technical difficulties.
So we're still up behind you.
Oh, here. Okay, all right. So what we look for, if you do want to file an appeal, what we look for is comparable sales. There it goes. Comparable sales of similar properties to show that your property is valued incorrectly based on what properties sold for. If there's anything wrong with your property, maybe you have a leaky roof or you have foundation problems, we'd ask for photos of this. If you've ever gotten quotes recently from a contractor about costs to repair it, we would ask for those estimates. And with all the sale transactions going on, there's a lot of fee appraisals floating around. So if you have a fee appraisal that says a different value, we'd ask you to submit the fee appraisal as part of your evidence in the appeal process. A couple key dates to consider and keep in mind. The effective date of the reappraisal is January 1st, 2024. We plan to mail notices early 2024. We have yet to determine when the Board of E&R will start. It has to start between the first Monday in April and the first Monday in May statutorily. So we'll determine that, the board will determine that once we get closer to that day. And the deadline to submit an appeal will be based on when the Board of E&R adjourns. That's the statutory deadline to file an appeal. And the first tax bills that will be impacted by these new values will come out in the summer of 2024. So I welcome any questions that you might have.
Ask a question. I just want to get clarity. You said something about you didn't go into the house. But the house may look like a two-story, but in actuality, it might be just a high roof.
That's correct.
People base a value on a two-story, not knowing that it's just a high roof.
So typically, that's a great question. Typically what we try to do is look at the previous information that we have on file. So if the previous information says that area is a one-story, and it looks to us like it may be a one-story, and we don't have any reason to change it, then we're not going to change it. If when we're walking around the house, we try not to peek in people's windows, but if when we're walking around the house, maybe the blinds are open and we can see from standing back that there is no floor up on that second level, we'll look at that. But we try to take into account everything that we can reasonably look at without going into people's houses.
So they might have to appeal one story versus you saying it's a two-story versus actuality one, but then they have to go through the process of appealing.
Yeah, if that is correct, that's why in the appeal process, we ask them to review, compare, and appeal. So if when they're reviewing the data in step one, they see that, hey, I only have a 2,000 square foot house, but you have me as 2,800 square feet. They can submit an appeal and we can address those fairly quickly. The reason that we ask everybody to file an appeal is for documentation purposes. And that way we know that we are following the law with mailing notices to everybody and documenting everything as we're supposed to.
Jerry, can I-
Oh, yes.
So just for clarification purposes.
Mhm.
So this budget that we'll be doing in 2024 will be affected by the new tax rates. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
No, so the next budget that we're working this spring,
No, I'm talking about 2024.
the 2024-25 budget,
That's correct.
fiscal year 25 budget is the budget that will be impacted. Yes, that starts July 1,
2025,
2024.
24 and 25.
Yes,
It starts at July 1st. That budget will be affected by the new rates.
yes.
How do we go about educating the citizens? I mean, there are a lot of modular homes in there that the upstairs is not done. And if you're calculating those, that would be a substantial number of property that may be overvalued. How do we educate the public? What information goes out to people other than here's your thing, appeal? It seems like there's a large part of the population that gets these things and they said, came from the government, I can't mess with it.
Yeah, that's right.
How do we fix that?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So part of what we do as a vendor is we work with the tax office to do as many PR meetings as they can schedule. We did a few reappraisals for 2022 and I was running around what felt like for 4 weeks in a row, every single night doing meetings all across the state, to community groups, to realtors associations, to neighborhood associations, basically to anybody that would listen, and giving a little bit more in-depth presentation than we did here, to help educate the public, and also to show the public at that point we can tell them when the actual dates are. We can show them more detailed examples of what's changing in the market. Right now, if anybody were to ask me what's going on in the market in Vance County, can't really give you an educated answer on that, because right now we focused on the data. We're turning our focus now towards the actual valuation process in this upcoming year. But to answer your question, we try to do as much PR as we can. I think Ms. Brooks will reach out to this board here once the time comes closer. And if you have any neighborhood associations, community groups, anything like that, that would like us to present to them, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Could I ask this question based on your experience? When you do a reevaluation, you send out the information based on what has happened previously. When you do a reevaluation, people get the notice, we have an excellent collection rate now. Do you find that it goes down when the new evaluation goes out? What's historically what has happened?
That's one thing that I really don't monitor. The tax office, in my perspective, is two sides. You have your collection and your personal property and your listing side. You have your real estate appraisal side. My side of the business is the real estate appraisal side. So I can explain what's going on with values, what typically happens with appeals after the mail notices. But I really don't know and don't follow or keep up with what happens to collection rates after reappraisals. That's data that maybe we could get. Maybe Portia could reach out to other counties and ask them if their collection rate changed post reappraisal versus pre-reappraisal. But that's just not something that I keep up.
The other question I was going to ask you is, we're in a potentially declining market right now. It's peaked. I think the triangle is still probably holding pretty close. Rate of sales has decreased, but in this market, it appears that the prices are decreasing a little bit. You said you would start the schedule of values in the fall, yet the 3 months can make a big difference in the market, in a sliding market, depending on what mortgage rates and those kind of things do. How do you account for that to get the value as of January 1st?
So that's why we don't mail notices on January 1st. We have to create the schedules and the rates. Statutorily, we need at least a month and a half to do that process. Because once it goes before the board and there's a public hearing, it has to be posted in a newspaper of general circulation for 4 consecutive weeks. So right there, you have a month at minimum. So that's why we start and present that schedule in October. We try to mail notices. It all depends on the county, the budgeting process, and so on and so forth. We try to mail notices sometime in February or March to give us time to look at that last month of December sales and see what was going on in that closing month. And if we have to, we can go in and adjust the values accordingly based on what happened that last month. Now, what's also important to keep in mind is that we have a 1/1/24 valuation date, but we're looking back 1 to 2 years on sales. So we haven't, we work all over the state, from counties that are half the size of Vance to, we're also doing some work in Wake County too. I haven't seen anywhere in North Carolina a decline yet. I've heard folks talking about it. I've seen a slowdown in the market. I've seen longer time on market. Houses that were selling in 5 days or 10 days are now selling in 30 days or 50 days. We haven't really seen a downturn yet in actual sale prices. We may see that once we start digging deep into the values here. But I simply across the state just haven't seen that happen. But to answer your question, we try to give ourselves a month or two after that date before mailing notices to give us any time to final adjust the values.
So that means we may have to come back and amend the schedule of values.
No. The schedule of values is the base rates. What we don't put in the schedule and we never have is things like land rates, for example. Land rates are set based on neighborhood. Somebody's going to pay different for an acre of land on the lake versus an acre of woodland somewhere out in the country, right? So we can't put land rates in there. We can't put, there's other factors that apply to the property, such as neighborhood factors. I might have the same exact house in one area and another area, but one area might sell for 20% more than another. In appraisal, we call that an area factor or a market factor or neighborhood factor. Those factors can be tweaked all the way up until the very end of the project, based on what the sales are doing in the neighborhood. And those factors are not in the schedule. So the schedule is just the base rates and the basic rates. But there's other things that are ever changing until we mail notices that are not in the schedule because we simply just can't put them in there due to the fact that they're always changing with the market.
We're beginning to see houses being reduced because of time on market, and we're also with appraisers not currently able to do time adjustments in this market.
Yeah.
As they were previously, which was inflating the price of houses. So those things we are having some decreases in the market now.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, we want to thank you.
All right. Well,
for
thank you
coming.
for letting me present.
Next, we have Elliot Clark from Via Health.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you and speak. The PowerPoint presentation that you guys have in front of you as well. Can I find the slideshow? Not displaying up there. Oh, sure. Okay. All right, so I come before you this evening to share an update from Via Health. As a quick reminder, we are your managed care organization that manages federal, state, Medicaid, and county dollars to provide behavioral health care in the county. And just as last month marked our 1-year anniversary with VIA being live in Vance County. So I'd like to celebrate that, and also thank you for your grace from last month. I was supposed to be here in January, and the cards were dealt a little bit differently that month with some illness that ran through the family. So I appreciate you guys accepting me back in February this month to come before you. So we'll get into the presentation. Just to acclimate you very briefly, we'll go through some numbers towards the end of the presentation. That'll be a dashboard that talks about service provision. But before that, we'll talk a little bit about just some initiatives that we have, talk a little bit about Medicaid transformation, how that's impacting our system. And then we'll talk specifically about our statewide initiative around serving our foster care population. So I mentioned that, the funding that we receive to manage services in the county is split 4 ways. The overwhelming majority of that funding comes from Medicaid. About 88% of the funding that VIA receives is accounted from Medicaid. That's per member, per month allocations that we receive from the state to provide care. Just to give you an idea on how that splits out from state and county, about 6% of that comes from the state to serve those without Medicaid, those underinsured and uninsured. And then about 2% of that fund comes from our counties to help supplement operations, help jumpstart new programs, that kind of thing. A little bit towards the end, when we go through how those services are provided from that funding, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the funding that Vance County appropriates to VIA, which is a little over $166,000 a year, $166,999 to be precise. So we've had an interesting year. It's been an interesting few years, but I'll start by just kind of giving an overview of the lay of the land and the impact that some of the workforce shortages, some of the developments within the state around Medicaid transformation have really created some challenges for us. As you guys are probably aware, we're in the midst of Medicaid transformation that will ultimately blend, which is a very good thing, will blend behavioral health care with physical health care, with pharmacy, so that health plans like ours don't just manage one piece of the person. We can incentivize providers, and we can hopefully organize care that treats the whole person. So as a brief kind of overview there and timeline, in April, we'll become a tailored plan, which means we'll start paying for not just behavioral health, but physical health, pharmacy, and so on. But we'll keep our specialized population. Our specialization is for those with most significant mental illness, substance use disorders, and developmental disabilities. But where we are in this state and Vance County is certainly a part of this situation, is that we've experienced probably the largest workforce shortage we've ever seen in our industry. A lot of industries have. The interesting piece that's adding to our situation is that throughout the pandemic, certain flexibilities have been given to providers to operate virtually. A lot of people that used to work in the county they might still be providing services in the county, but it might be delivered through telehealth, which has its place. But it is something that's creating a little bit more of a shift where you have physicians and clinicians that might be living in a particular part of the state, but not serving that part of the state. That flexibility has created some challenges for us. Another piece of that is within new health plans. So I mentioned we're becoming a tailored health plan. You already have commercial health plans that have been operating for the Medicaid behavioral health population for about 1.5 years. That's resulted in about a 75% decrease in our total membership. Financially, we still have, we're still at about 95% of our budget that we continue to pay out for the population because of the high cost membership that we have. But what you have in tandem with some of those other changes is that a lot of our staff have shifted over and started working for commercial health plans. So kind of that perfect storm has gotten us into some challenges that we have some solutions for that we've already been working around. I wanted to just kind of frame the introduction in recognizing that that's a big challenge for us right now. Some of those workforce shortages have created wait lists. They've created They've stretched our current capacity for our facility. We have a crisis facility that I'm sure some of you have already been aware and have got the memo that is due to close in March, a lot of which stems from challenges in how that's funded, but also in a reduction in volume. We also have, but our plan is a plan to stabilize those walk-in centers, incentivize providers, and move past some of the challenges that have just naturally been put in front of us. The good thing about being a specialized healthcare plan like us is we have the flexibility within those Medicaid rates to incentivize on a much more localized level. So we can track what's going on and supplement appropriately, county by county. So some of the strategies there are going to be to focus on our walk-in centers. We've done so through consulting directly with some of those physicians and clinical staff around what they need to be paid. And we have, in some cases, doubled the rates that we pay for those clinics that exist in our more rural counties, Vance being one of them. So not just stabilizing and making sure that providers can keep people, but recruitment is a big part of our solution as well. We have worked really closely with our provider advisory council, making sure they're educated on what incentives already are in place, what loan forgiveness programs really look like, so that they can tap into as many resources as they can to recruit new staff. Also, one of the things that we've strategized is to incentivize face-to-face care. I mentioned telehealth is creating an interesting challenge and an advantage in some senses, but for rural health, it's really a negative impact for us. So we haven't just raised rates for these walk-in centers. We've incentivized providers to provide face-to-face care. When they submit a claim to us that's not telehealth, we pay more for that. We've also focused on expanding substance use services. We've done so in Vance through the introduction of a new substance abuse intensive outpatient clinic. We have a brand new, it's been in existence actually about 6 months now, brand new, it's called SAIOP, but a substance use group for youth that is really one of the first of its kind. It's been a big challenge for providers to sustain that because you have to work after hours so that folks can, the youth can come after school and work with schedules. That's specific to Vance County. We've also implemented a new walk-in clinic in Granville County, and I mentioned Granville County's clinic because historically folks from the northern end of the county have had to come to Vance and have affected some of the capacity that we currently have in Vance. So building out this walk-in clinic in Oxford is hopefully going to free up some of that capacity so that more folks in Vance County can be seen more efficiently. That clinic just opened last month. And we have a plan as well to expand our 24/7 crisis facility capacity. In this county, currently, we have a 10-bed facility, but we're looking at a much more robust plan that will include community diversion and hopefully some facility-based crisis for youth. Currently, what we have now is medical detox and facility-based crisis for adults. So our long-term goal there is to expand that so that we can serve a broader population. Some more strategies around just addressing the workforce is not just focused on our walk-in capacity, but it's our direct support professionals. When you hear the word, and maybe some of you were aware of some of the legislation that raised the rate floor for direct support professionals, but those are the folks primarily that go out into the communities, go out into people's homes, provide services to families to keep them from being institutionalized. So to keep them at home and to keep them living in a independent environment. We have taken that rate floor and raised it even more so that we can keep some of those qualified staff that may not be your licensed clinicians, but that still play a very key role in what we do. So we've incentivized that as well. Before then, we would lose staff to Target, who now pays $20 an hour in some places. So you get families that were working and have a staff come in that they may have been working with for years, and because of other markets being able to pay more, you literally lose staff that are healthcare professionals to completely other industries just because they need that money to meet their cost of living. So again, I'll reiterate though, you know, these are strategies that are not just formed from VIA. Now, we have a broad kind of complex advisory structure, but one of the key elements is two factors. One, the people that receive our services. We have a board, you guys have heard of CFAC, Consumer and Family Advisory Council, but our Provider Advisory Council has really helped drive some of this work. So we're thankful for that. Shifting gears just a little bit and talking a little bit more about the state's proposed model for our foster care system, which the state is referring to as a child and family specialty plan. There's proposed legislation that is still in a committee around appropriations for it's House Bill 144 for a statewide foster care plan to be implemented in the state of North Carolina. If you guys remember, we were here, it's probably been 8 months ago, actually, talking through this and gained support so that the Department of Health and Human Services understands that a lot of the preference, especially in rural counties, is to keep a localized plan and not a statewide plan that would have more of a commercial approach. We're still fighting that fight. That legislation is about to be baked in to a bill that will be rewritten to expand Medicaid, which is a positive thing in many senses. But it will, if that statewide plan to address that population is approved, it will have some negative implications for the system as a whole. So we instituted a strategy about 6 months ago called the Statewide Improvement Plan, Child and Family Improvement Plan. And that essentially takes all of our LME MCOs from the other areas of the state and standardizes processes so that there's not the same authorization process. They don't have to wait an X amount of time in one county versus another county where they may have a pass-through and not need an authorization for care. We've standardized a lot of that. We have a statewide network that if you have a provider that works in Durham and they're contracted to provide this service, they're contracted in Vance County to provide that service. So that network that used to be very siloed and much more difficult to manage, frankly, for everybody, DSS included for sure, has been standardized. So a lot of the areas that the state was very concerned of and that drove some of this legislation is being resolved. So we want to make sure that that's communicated to our legislature. So I won't crawl through some of the other details, but a lot of it is around processes for providers. A lot of burden, a lot of administrative burden that our providers have been facing for this population are being removed. Another strategy that we've done, and we have embedded case managers in our region in every single county that we cover. Vance DSS is no different. They have a care manager that is physically there twice a week, and they have a dedicated team that touches base with them every week to discuss high-risk cases and staff those with that department, which I think has been working pretty well. The other piece that I'll mention around this initiative is that we've tried to expand emergency placement. I know everybody has heard on the news of kids sleeping on couches in DSS offices. And you see the rooms where there's a couple of beds and in some counties, multiple cots within a room where they're literally sleeping and housing kids in foster care. So we have added, since VIA's go live a year ago, we've contracted 61 new crisis beds across the state. We have a plan to institute another 54 and to bring those to this area instead of, everybody knows VIA originally headquartered out of the West, but the rest of the strategy is specifically focused on the central and eastern part of the state. So those are the things we're trying to do to make sure that we can improve access for that population. I talked a lot about rates in the beginning for our walk-in clinics. This is no different for this population to incentivize new families, hopefully, to be willing to become foster parents, to open up their homes, possibly in crisis situations. So we've increased the rate from formerly $97 a day for our therapeutic foster care to $175 a day. And for emergency respite, that's at $360 a day. That's slowly catching on. But it's an uphill battle. We've got a serious dearth of foster care families in this region. So hopefully those increased rates will not just recruit new families, but retain them and improve the actual access of the youth that need that level of care. Briefly, I did want to go through, I know this is a big issue and area of interest in Vance County is affordable and supportive housing for this population. A lot of folks, when they think about bio or behavioral health, housing and how that fits in is kind of a mystery. But we manage 4 different grants, essentially, 4 different pieces of funding that provide not just assistance with rental assistance or utilities, but also in extra layers of service that wrap around that individual to help them live independently within their own home. Many of you have probably heard of the Transitions to Community Living Program or the DOJ settlement that came about 15 years ago and is now just taken root. I think it was settled and actually instituted 11 years ago. But within that settlement, we still have funding to be able to house folks, transition them from much higher levels of care like assisted living facilities, adult care homes that are just not appropriate for folks that live with mental health issues into the community where they can get different levels of support. I won't walk through every single one of these, but each of these touches on not just the financial assistance for being able to cover rent and maybe the initial cost in that, but is oriented towards treatment to be implemented into the home. I did include a link if you guys are curious, and you should be able to access it through your document to our website that specifically walks through each of these programs. I'll give a brief shout out because some of you may know him, but a housing specialist that's worked in this community for many years just came on board with VIA. We were finally able to add that position. So if you guys know Joel Rice, he's a supportive housing guru that's worked in this community for many years, is going to be our new housing specialist. So big shout out to Joel. Wanted to speak a little bit about some of the initiatives and collaboratives that we have in Vance County. We have been in operation, our crisis response collaborative has been in operation in Vance for about 7 months now. And just wanted to have some awareness around that. The ultimate goal there is to improve access and efficiencies for those that come through involuntary commitment and the linkage to care after that process. That's the primary goal of that group. That comes with a close partnership with not just our immediate contracted providers, but law enforcement, our hospital system are big players in that. Our EMS department, well, community paramedicine is going to be a fantastic resource for this county, and how that interfaces with our system is going to be key. We also have our Tri-County Community Collaborative that includes Franklin and Granville and Vance, and that focuses on the interface between DSS, our school system, and our providers. 2 more that I'll mention is a partnership with Granville Vance Public Health Integrated Care Outreach Network Consortium. That meets every month and focuses on how we contract with providers that will also have embedded physical health care or collaborative physical health care with behavioral health care. And a new collaborative that we have that's just really come back into formation after the pandemic is a partnership with our federally qualified health center, Rural Health Group, our health department, and some of our providers as the Vance County Substance Use Coalition. I will mention this, there's interest obviously in that group in funding. Can't be enough funding to serve this population. Medicaid is not a good coverage for this population. And there's interest in potentially taking a look at opioid settlement dollars, other grants that may help enhance and expand services for those with substance use disorders. So I mentioned that to the group actually on Friday last week, and everybody perked up and they're interested to help however is necessary with advising whatever the county's wishes are around the opioid settlement. It's good to have a group of subject matter experts and providers that are actually serving the population. I know that there's a lot of interest from a lot of different parties in this opioid settlement. So it's good to have some folks that are on the ground doing the clinical work and offer perspective around what the actual impact is. All right, let me shift another gear. I know I'm been talking for a minute, so I can sense need to pick it up. So looking at the numbers very quickly here. So up until September, we still have a quarter that we can't calculate. There's a 90-day claim lag within Medicaid. But up through July and September, we've served a total of about 1,500 members in Vance County. Pre-pandemic and standard plan that took 75% of our people, the numbers were about 3,200 a year. So we're actually ahead of our mark of what our goal would be for total service provision in Vance County so far. So that's very encouraging. What's still a big challenge, and what you'll see here, just very briefly to break this down. So you have Medicaid on the left. Non-Medicaid is that state fund that I mentioned, those folks that are uninsured. And IDD is the population, intellectual developmental disabilities. Those are primarily the folks that are on the waiver that require in-home care to keep folks out of institutionalization. MH is mental health, and then SUD is substance use disorder. Out of that total, this is a breakdown of what services actually look like, what levels of care folks end up accessing. The vast majority is still on the outpatient level. So outpatient therapy, medication management with a psychiatrist, folks that are able to manage through those basic level services. That's still primarily the volume, the highest volume that we pay for and that we see. The next of which, though, is peer support. Peer support is a service that is can be very effective when you tie in folks with lived experience offering treatment. A lot of times that removes bias and barriers that keep folks out of the system. So that is a very positive thing, but it's something that we're paying very close attention to because in this county, you have a lot of providers that are coming in from out of the area to do that service. So what we're looking at is we're wanting that service to be baked in as part of a continuum so that it doesn't just stand alone and that you don't have a provider coming in to do that. It's not collaborating with your psychiatrist, your outpatient therapist, and that kind of thing. We want that to be part of a continuum to make sure people are getting connected with therapy and psychiatric care as they need to. And the rest there, you'll see inpatient. That number there, I don't know that I don't think that's completely comprehensive. It indicates that only 27 in the months July through September actually received inpatient level of psychiatric care. Because there is even more of a lag on the hospital side in our claim, that number is much higher. So once we reach a full year, some of these numbers will be a little bit more informative. We'll be able to trend some things after we have a full year worth of data. And these are the same breakdown. That previous graph was for Medicaid, and this is for state. The main difference here is that you'll see a little bit more around the residential level of care. Most Medicaid does not pay for residential services for adults. We lean on our state funding for that. This slide breaks down our providers that are offering services in Vance County by the numbers. You see that Daymark and Vance Recovery are the two highest. Folks are familiar with Daymark through the clinic, open access clinic that they offer, and Vance Recovery is our opioid treatment program in the county as well. The rest of those are outpatient behavioral health, with the exception of the bottom three that are peer support providers, specifically peer support providers. And I'm sorry, Fast Brain at the very bottom is a psychiatric outpatient provider, but they're located in Oxford. So once again, we're hoping that resource in Granville County will serve Granville County and that will free up some capacity in Vance. And then on the right, you have your state funded services. Speaking very briefly and to wrap up about our innovations waiver. Again, this is the waiver that waives the financial eligibility for Medicaid and takes a look at need. So families, this is the one where you hear about, thousands of families in the state being on the wait list for the innovations waiver. This is what the numbers look like in Vance County. Currently, we have 61 people on the waiver. We have 41 that are on the wait list. And out of that 41, we have 29% that are actually receiving services. So Medicaid has another set of funding that is not the waiver, but that pays for some periodic care so that those folks don't have to go without. That was a lot. Jordan wanted me to make sure that we had a little bit more of a low-level conversation about the county funding that we receive. So out of the $166,000 that we manage, $166,000 a year, about 38% of that goes towards our facility-based crisis. And the vast majority are services that are baked in our detention center. And I see the sheriff here. Some of the jail services that we have, the telehealth, psychological services, the social work services that are baked in with the detention center are intended to serve that population. We've got a provider that has done a lot of that work for years, Vision Behavioral Health, and we're hoping that that continues. There's a lot that's been done over the last 6 years through the Stepping Up initiative. So, but I wanted that breakdown to remind you guys that out of that funding, that's the pocket that goes towards serving that population. All right, I am almost out of my voice. And I know I went over my time, Jordan, I'm sorry. Any questions? Happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Just key takeaways, just FYI, this thing with the foster care waiver is a big deal. And there's not, rural areas would be affected tremendously if they go to this one unit system for the state. We're seeing it already that a lot of providers are wanting to serve larger urban areas and the rural areas are getting dismissed. So as that goes to the legislature, I think it'll be important for us to engage in that and try to stop that. The current system, the way it's set up is when someone is engaged in foster care at a level 1, social services handles it and the funding comes from the county. At the next level, which is a more intensive level, then it goes to VIA to manage it and providers and so forth. There's have been some breakdowns in communications with that. VIA's done a great job of embedding in the social services as he was talking about. And we feel we've got a better way to do that than to put some private company in charge of it who has no current network and them have to establish network and then try to provide from there. Where there's privatization throughout the country, we're seeing a lot of denials for treatment. And there are a lot of lawsuits pending now because of that. So then people go without services. And that's one of the main things that's affecting the mental health stability in this country right now. So.
Do you have educational groups where a person who gets services maybe can come and find out what all that individual will be eligible for? Because a lot of people they receive services and think that's all it is, when in essence, they may be eligible for better benefits or different benefits than what they're already getting.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you all relying on the case manager to give them that information, or is there an avenue where they can go and get that information so they'll be more informed about what they're entitled to get?
Yes, ma'am. So our care managers do that, but that's if they already have an assigned care manager. A care manager's role is not just, let me help assess and refer you to a provider, but they're dedicated to that person so that if they or the family has questions, there's that dynamic. But for new folks trying to get involved in the system or just find out more information, the VIA Health member services and recipient line is the way to do that. That same avenue holds true for any level of care. So if it's a crisis level of care, they can find out about services that they're entitled to through that member and recipient line. And that website will take you straight to it. That link that's in your PowerPoint, viahealth.com will, right when you open up viahealth.com, it'll have one of the first things you see is a link for members and families.
And, are you making it accessible for people to find out the existence of that link and so that they'll know where they can go to get the necessary information?
Yes, ma'am. So we have, out of this first year, we do have marketing material that's now reflective of the current catchment, having our counties as a part of VIA. That's being distributed. We've got community meetings. We've partnered with Baskerville Funeral Home actually on a series of different trainings that's available for the community. You know, we've got our distribution lists that we blast out information on a pretty regular basis. From the marketing side, I think we're becoming equipped. We've got the material finally now that we can actually distribute, both, you know, electronically and actually on flyers and billboards and that kind of thing.
So where are you putting this information at, you know, so that people will have access to it? Are you leaving it like, say, for instance, in the library, Franklin Management, where people who may need these services will have access to get these services without, because everybody is not technology friendly to be able to go online and get this information where maybe they can, you know, pick up a brochure or whatever, but they got to know where these brochures are at, you know, like City Hall, where they go to pay their, what to be, you know,
Right.
what efforts have been made to make sure that they're being evenly distributed so that the people who really need access to those links will have it.
And I could probably poll a couple of different departments to see where those have been distributed. I know personally, I've distributed them within DSS and our public health department and our federally qualified health center. So the core area that we want to hit is on the healthcare side, especially for primary family practices. So when folks are coming in, and sometimes physicians don't even really know what VIA does, right? So that educational material and the education to those providers is something that we're trying to keep very close so that they understand if there's a need that presents in their office when they're meeting with a family or an individual, they can say, hey, you know, if you need to be linked, call this number, call VIA. I'll say that right now our footprint and exposure through the hard copy marketing material is pretty minimal. I think we're just really getting started. But we're getting there. I will say that public health is probably
Three
the closest.
billboards now in Vance County, is that right?
Say that again. Sorry.
3 billboards in Vance County now.
Correct.
It's one out on 39.
There's one, well, I think one of the ones you might be thinking of is on 15 in Oxford.
Okay.
There's one on 39. I have to go back and look. I've seen the one on 39. I think that's the only one I've seen.
I think there are 3 of them in this area. right now.
Yeah, one's in Vance, one's in Granville. I know one's in Franklin.
So at the Department of Social Services, are they in the lobby area where
I'm not sure.
people coming in are gonna have an opportunity just to pick up that information?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't say, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'd have to go back and check. But if they're not, we can get them there.
'Cause I think that's one of the main problems in getting these services is people need to know how they can access it. You know, are you all utilizing the Cardinal Building downtown, the old Cardinal Building downtown? That's your building now, is that right?
Not to where we need to be. So we've got plans.
Okay.
There's been a couple of things that have been proposals that we've tried to see if it would work. One of them is a prospective sublease that I know this group has been, you know, prized to. The plan, the ultimate plan as far as VIA's footprint there is to have community education and health programming and to get our staff back and have some touchdown space. Staff can still access it anytime they want to. It's just a matter of the actual conference rooms and some of the larger spaces being up and running again. Since the reset with, you know, since VIA has come on board, and even prior to when folks went remote with Cardinal, the functionality of that office went down a great deal. I'm still there several days a week, but it's lonely in there. But we have plans for that. We have plans for that space to get folks back in there and to actually have some outward facing programming.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I got 2 questions.
Okay.
I got 2 questions here. One, so you've increased the rate for therapeutic foster care by over 80%. Now you've gone from $97 to $175. Who pays that money?
Medicaid.
All that money
Medicaid.
comes from Medicaid.
Yes,
So
sir.
You charge Medicaid for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a per member per month
Well,
allocation.
that's good. I just want
Yep.
to make sure the county isn't paying for it.
Correct. No, sir.
Okay, that's all I care. Uh,
No, sir.
The second question I have deals with mental health. Now, you have closed the walk-in mental health clinic in Vance County. And did the one in Oxford coexist with this one? Were they going on both at the same time?
Two separate clinics, two separate functions.
So, but you closed the Vance County mental health walk-in. And you say you have opened one in Oxford, in Ramsey County.
So,
Explain how this works to me, because mental health, everybody talks about mental health, what a great problem it is. And now I hear our provider has closed our mental health, the only one in the area that we have. You've closed it, shifted it to Oxford. And I'd like to know why that is. Why is it
Sure.
we don't have a mental health thing?
so there's two separate programs. The walk-in clinic that's in Oxford is a clinic that's operated during regular business hours. The walk-in component means that there's flexibility for people to walk in without an appointment. The clinic that has given notice, VIA did not close that clinic, but the clinic that has given notice.
They closed it because you didn't fund it, because you couldn't negotiate a rate. So VIA closed it. If they didn't fund it, they closed it.
Right.
Because it's my understanding is if you had funded it, they'd still be open.
There's a lot about that dynamic.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sure. There's a lot about that dynamic that we are currently in negotiations with them. But most of it is around transitional planning to a more sustainable model. What I'll say about all that is this. What we have had in this county has been a standalone clinic. That means, and that it is a different clinic in that is a facility-based crisis. That's a clinic that's open 24/7 and it serves a region. It serves Vance, Granville, Franklin, and Person County. Primarily, about 5% of the folks from Person County wind up going there. It's primarily Vance, Granville, and
But
Franklin.
look, I don't want to get confused there.
That's okay.
All right. So you have not closed, well, the mental health clinic here in Vance County is closing because VIA didn't fund it. But that's not the point. The point, well, that's part of the point. But the other point is, when that closes, we do not have a mental health walk-in here in Vance County. That's
That's
what I'm
not true.
concerned about.
Right. So we have a
how's
whole,
VIA- How is VIA replacing what's closing in Vance County?
that is a plan that's in action. We actually just met with their leadership this afternoon again around the transition plan. We already have a provider identified for that clinic, for that walk-in, that facility-based crisis, which is different than the walk-in clinic that we already have in Vance. Daymark already operates a walk-in clinic during.
So you're
regular
gonna
business
replace the
hours.
one we have. When this
We are looking
closes,
at a-
you're gonna replace
we're
one
looking at a
in
new-
Vance, it will be in Vance
Yes,
County,
yes, sir.
and it will be a mental health walk-in thing.
It will be a
I just wanna
facility-based
replace it.
crisis. Yes, sir. Yeah, it'll be a facility-based crisis center. And actually, it'll embed more services than the current one is able to provide, which will
Okay,
make
so
it
it's
more
closing
sustainable.
in March.
Correct.
It's closing in March. When does VIA plan to have the new one in place? What's that gap?
As soon as, I don't know yet. As soon as possible. That's what we're in negotiations is around the transition. I don't know. We're doing everything we can to minimize the gap in transition there.
So it sounds
This-
like when we went with VIA, we lost a major capability in mental health.
I would say that it's a transition to a more sustainable model. We've been looking at this for many months, trying to figure out a way to sustain that type of a program. I'll say this, and we said this to their leadership this afternoon. What we need is a program that's willing to do other services that bring down Medicaid revenue versus state revenue. 80% of what that facility brings in relies on state funding, which is much more volatile than Medicaid. So what we're doing is not taking away a facility.
Well,
We're
let's just.
hitting a
put it this way.
reset. We're helping
I
hit the
understand
reset
that.
button.
You're talking about a funding stream and capabilities and that sort of thing.
Correct.
The main thing I'm concerned about is that in Vance County, we will have a mental health, whether you call it walk-in, whatever you want to call it, there will be in Vance County a mental health clinic of some type that VIA supports. Right?
Absolutely.
And,
There already
and-
is.
And the gap between that, what we have today, and what VIA is going to put in place is not going to be 12 months.
That's our hope. We have a plan. We already have a
Right.
provider that as long as things work out with the current provider, we would get him in there on March 3rd.
I'll,
But we're in
I'll,
negotiations around that.
I'll say it a little less eloquently than Elliot's trying to. For a long time, we've had issues with this current provider providing adequate services in our community. And the funding is one part of it, but there have been deficiencies with their ability to deliver services.
I
And
just want one here, Dan. I know.
yeah, so what we're working on now is a definite improvement to make things better for the citizens in this county.
Well, you're on the board. We'll hold you accountable for that. Help. Please.
I'm on the regional board and then also I'm able to serve on the governance board, so.
I'm also on the legacy board. It's my understanding that you are going to provide services. So it's been a big question on our board as to what's going to happen. And so it's my understanding, the information I'm getting, that we're going to provide the service, but it may not,
Only one, they gotta go.
we're going to provide the service based on what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I know about Jacinta's concern. She reached out to us pretty quickly after
For
that.
now,
I understand Jacinta, Legacy's concern around that reduction. She
okay.
reached out really quickly and we ensured to her that we have a provider that's already identified. It's just a matter of when we.
Well, I emailed that was my understanding and everything. And
Yes, sir.
we not to just panic because emails were going haywire and everything. And so after a little investigation, I was trying to assure them that the service will be provided.
Yes.
And you said now by March 3rd.
So it will close on March 2nd. The date that a new provider would be able to go live, I'm not sure of yet, but we're in very close communication with them around that transition plan. There's a lot that goes into it around state licensing and processes that some of which are out of our control, but we're already trying to get ahead of those.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is this the only mental health we have in this county?
You
Anybody?
mean provider wise?
Is Via the only mental health?
No, so we have
Yes or
multiple
no?
contracted providers. No.
So what's the issue? I'm confused.
Well, each provider does something a little different. Now, the facility, that crisis facility that Commissioner Taylor was just asking about is the only one of its kind. But we have lots of other providers that, that provide outpatient treatment, therapy, in-home treatment.
I'm just trying to understand, because all this new to me, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to see what the issue is.
We have options.
think, clarify. What we have is a situation where Recovery Innovation, have put in notice that they'll be closing. However, it was, Mr. Taylor's concern that with them closing, there would not be a provider provide for those types of mental health services. What Via has stated is that they have every intention of making sure if Recovery Innovation leaves here, that there's going to be someone to take its place. So that Vance County will not be without a, mental health, center such as Recovery Innovation. I think that was one of Mr. Taylor's concerns, that our citizens will be properly cared for, through, capable facilities. And as he stated, they're already in negotiation stage. So as soon as that contract ends, there will be someone that it has been earmarked to come in to Vance County to provide those services. But in the interim, there is facilities in Grafton County, which is so clear that the person can actually utilize.
There is, the difference is, think about the crisis center as a small hospital that has a shorter length of stay. That's what we need to restore. The clinic in Oxford and the current clinic that's not going away that we have in Henderson, that operates during business hours, there's no change there. The change is going to be in a new provider that offers that hospital-like care.
Or the pay, right? Waiting for this to provide, for someone in the community. That is on the website and the presentation, which shows different providers. Here in those,
And one thing there, you don't see Via's name. Via is not a
Yeah,
provider.
we're not a mental health.
You know, they're the ones that basically just facilitate, organize the whole process.
Care coordination.
Yeah.
We're the health plan that contracts the work.
We can take you through the full length seminar if you'd like to go through.
That's a couple of days.
About what is, what happened. Process. Or any other questions.
Thank you for your abbreviated presentation, Elliot.
Thanks for the extension. And thank you for your questions. I
We want to thank you for
Appreciate it.
and clarifying, many issues concerning vice president here in our county.
Right.
I think it provided additional information for those who need services, knowing that there are links that they can refer to so that they can find out who the providers are and when they can give these services. And I think the fact that, you feel there is a helpline where they can also refer to this to help a lot of people because they can touch base with that helpline and get the proper direction where they can get the help that they really need.
Is that text line still up?
say that
The
again.
text line
Text line?
Yeah.
There's still a feature on that website that you can,
was asked or whatever.
yeah, I can't remember the exact name of it now.
Hey, listen,
Viahealth.com, right? When you pull it up, that member and recipient section, right there.
thank you again for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Now we're gonna open the, water district board. There's the water committee report.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go over that for you if you don't mind. So the Water Committee did meet this month. They met January 23rd, and the main purpose of that meeting was to review a renewal contract with EnviroLink. As you all know, EnviroLink is the entity that oversees our water system. They operate it, they maintain it, they manage it. And they've been doing that since the beginning of the system back in 2013. So they've been doing that for 10 years, and now we're at the point where we're looking to renew their contract. We're also required to have a licensed individual operate the system. That's called an operator in responsible charge, or ORC for short. And they fulfill that for us. That's a state requirement. They handle our customer service and our billing. And so the committee talked through the contract renewal. We learned in that discussion that the contract really is a mirror of the existing one. There's a few added words, but nothing significant is changing. It is a 5-year contract that would allow for an additional 5-year extension. There is no price increase as a part of the contract renewal. The price is subject to annual CPI adjustments. So it changes each year based off of CPI, but there's no specific price change in this agreement. Just so you know what we pay EnviroLink on an annual basis, last year we paid just under $260,000 to them. That's made up of 3 buckets. The first bucket is around $7,000 that we pay each month. That's for that the monthly operations maintenance services. We also, the second item is a per customer per month, we pay $6.12. That's for the customer service, that's for the billing and the collections. And then the third piece is $3,344 we've been paying each month for project management. We are, with this contract, getting rid of the project management services. So that will save us about $40,000 a month. But just so you know, again, we paid about $260,000 to EnviroLink, and that's on a total water budget of just under $1.3 million. So as far as the committee discussion, we from the staff standpoint, we mentioned to the committee there may be a need to add back in some contracted project management. That wasn't something the committee wanted to look at right now. But as you all know, EnviroLink does have a local office. They're open here 5 days a week here in this building facing Young Street. That's not a part of this contract. It never has been. They intend to keep that open 5 days a week. And that was actually increased recently from 2 days a week. And they did that on their own volition. And, but all in all, the committee was agreeable to the contract renewal. They are recommending that we proceed forward and approve it, and would ask that we do that subject to final attorney review. And that's the recommendation of the committee.
So moved.
We had a motion that we approve the renewal contract with Envirolink, subject to final attorney review by Commissioner Payne, seconded by Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
With any discussion? Any opposed? I have it, so we have approved the renewal contract with Envirolink.
Right.
To final attorney.
And if I may, just want to mention a couple other things water related to you as a part of the monthly operations report, which is there. But so this evening we had the audit presentation. So I want to highlight something from the audit. The question that we typically get is, how is the water system doing? Are we self-sufficient? So I just wanted to address that briefly with you. The system is continuing, and what was presented tonight, it's continuing to be break even in terms of cash. We brought in just over $43,000 more in revenues than we had in expenditures for the county system. Now, what is showing in the audit is a loss. That's net, a loss in net position. So when you bring in depreciation of the age of the system, there is a net loss, but in terms of cash, we're break even again this year to the tune of a little over $43,000. That depreciation each year is growing because as the system is now in some parts 8, 9, 10 years old, you're talking over $200,000 just in depreciation last year. And so, but the good news there is we haven't had to transfer. We had budgeted to transfer $156,000 from our general fund to the water fund. We didn't have to do that with the audit. And we again brought in that $43,000. So revenues are continuing to cover expenses, I guess, is the main message there. I wanted to highlight from the audit.
What does the water fund owe the county general fund at this point?
Catherine tells me 1.4 million.
1.4.
And that's the payback from all of the other general fund transfers we've made historically. You remember the first year, it might have been $400,000-$500,000 that we had to make from our general fund. And as we get into this next phase, so phase 1B is the next phase of the system, we'll be having to probably transfer some from the general fund over for first couple of years. So I don't want that to shock you. When we take on that additional debt, we'll be looking at first couple of years having to do that again. So that's kind of the audit update. Any other questions on that? There's another item or two I want to mention for you too. All right. So the operations report, which is in your agenda, no major changes there. I talked with Envirolink today and they're making good headway on those tap installs, the 45 new signups that we've had. They have installed as of today, 25 of those. So they're over halfway done. And they've done that just in the last month. So now that they've gotten their subcontractors started, they're making good headway. They've essentially gotten all of the short taps installed. And so they're going to be transitioning now to the long taps. But they're over halfway there and making good progress on that.
Have we done all of those where time was of the essence?
That we're aware of. Yes. Yeah, we had a few situations where there were some houses that were right there towards the tail of being finished and we were able to get those in and completed. Last item on the water that I wanted to mention was just to briefly give you an update on phase 1B, because we've just received word late Friday and then again today that USDA has given us authorization to go to bid. That's what we've been waiting for. We've been working with them over several months. And so what that means is the speed will pick up here in terms of putting the project out for bid, receiving those bids, seeing where they are, if it's within our budget, going to the LGC after that, getting their approval, and then ultimately getting to the point where we'll be able to go to construction. So that's good news that USDA has given that go ahead for us. And our work will be starting now for phase 1B to get it going. So.
As our engineer indicated, the market now as far as material costs and labor availability or contract availability?
We've talked generally about that. He mentioned there's been some good contractor availability, but prices are still up. And so we'll see where the bids come ultimately, but, you know, the budget that we established for this entire project is $6.5 million. That's been established. It has some age on it. And so that includes $2 million in ARPA dollars that we would be putting into it. So we'll see where bids come back and where we are, but all indications, we're now at a good place to move forward. So. Yeah, that won't ever end. That won't ever. end.
Next on the agenda, committee reports and recommendations.
Yep. So we had two committees that met this month, the Properties Committee and the HR Committee. HR Committee met then a second time today. I'll go over that in just a second. But for the Properties Committee, the main topic there is we gave them an update on where we were in purchasing the land for the EMS station. They met January 23rd. Just as you all may recall, the board approved a contract to purchase 2.5 acres there back in September. That did include a 180-day due diligence period, which comes up a month basically from today in early March. So far, what we've done, we've completed the due diligence I think that we had set out to do initially, which was to survey the property. We've recorded that survey. We had a phase 1 environmental report that's been done. And DOT has given us a comfort level that we can have driveways on the North Garnett side of the property. During this committee meeting, the county attorney had informed the committee that title work had been completed, but there are some restrictions, restrictive covenants that are on the land that he is working with the seller on, particularly when Dollar General purchased a property several years ago. There were restrictive covenants that could potentially restrict our use of that property. And you have those restrictive covenants in your agenda packet. But there's 4 sections, section 4F, 4G, 4M, and 4N, which are highlighted. And essentially what those restrictive covenants do, the first one says that you cannot operate a wand operated car wash. That was one of the ones that created some concern. The second one was the use of odor, fumes, or noise, which could be a concern on the property. You cannot have an automotive body shop. And then the third one is you cannot have any living quarters. And so all 4 of those could potentially impact what we could use that property for. And so the attorney is working to resolve those with the sellers. And then we'll be seeing whether, the attorney would need to extend that or request that we get an extension of the 180 days, or whether we could move forward with closing at that point. So that was provided to the committee and there was a good bit of discussion, but just wanted to provide that for the board as well.
Concerning the update. For clarification, at this point in time, concerning, have you been able to resolve that issue?
No, Madam Chair, I did reach back out after the committee meeting to the company that owns the Dollar General property. They responded Thursday of last week, if I remember right, and said that they had received my prior email and would hopefully get back with me within a week or 2.
Got one question. Would it prohibit us from purchasing the land if they don't remove the restriction? I mean, you want me to do?
It would not allow, one of the main ones, the biggest ones, it would not allow for the living quarters for our employees there. That's correct. So we had an investigation period to where we were allowed to do this very thing. We've done some preliminary due diligence on the construction and making sure that the driveway permits and all that but we also did title work, and that's when we found these restrictive covenants. And that's the whole idea of this period is we get it under contract and then allow us to do the investigation and development of plans to the extent that we need to make sure that we're going to purchase this property. And when we do, it will fit our needs. That's correct. That's right. Nothing at this point.
Anyone else have any questions? We need the clarification about where we at. Next, we have, report from the Human Resources Committee.
Yep, yeah, so HR committee, they met January 30th. The main purpose of their meeting, they reviewed the public comment policy, which relates to this board meeting and the public comments at the beginning of the meeting. And specifically, the chair had requested that committee to meet. We have a copy of those, that policy in your agenda, but section 1 was an item that the chair had brought up. It basically limits those that can speak to being residents or property owners. So that was the main purpose of the group coming together, but it offered them the opportunity to sort of take a holistic view over the entire policies. They did look at some guidance from the School of Government. They didn't see a clear legal basis around that resident property owner matter. So they're not recommending that we change that at the current time, but they are recommending 2 additional changes to the policy, one in section 2 and one in section 7. The change in section 2 basically removes, and it also clarifies the topics that would be off limits for speakers when they come forward. And then the section 7 item is how to handle situations when you're appointing a spokesperson for a group of citizens, and also when you're how to handle situations when the room is full and you have folks that are signed up. And so they are recommending 2 changes to that. So the recommended changes are in blue line in your agenda, and the committee is recommending that we proceed forward and approve that revised public comment policy. They did meet again today and had some additional discussion, but no additional changes came out of that discussion today. And so again, the committee is recommending approval of the revised public comment policy as they presented.
Move that the policy as revised be approved.
Madam Chair, can we have a minute to review this because this just happened, and just to read through this and get clarity before we proceed?
Yeah, and nothing changed today from their meeting last week. It was the same item that was in there last week too, so.
So do we have a motion or what's, I missed
I
something.
move that we approve the revised public comment policy.
Second.
Yeah, I know there was some conversation about allowing people to delegate their speaking time. Was there any action taken on that?
Those revisions actually came a couple of months ago. We've already completed those. Didn't recommend any further changes on the delegation of time.
Okay. All right.
Is that, so is the motion still stand now? Are you said,
So there's been a motion by Commissioner Taylor that we accept the recommendation of the research committee, that we accept changes to the public comment policy. It's been seconded by
whoever? Esther.
been properly seconded. All those in favor?
All right.
All those opposed? Aye, unanimous. So it's now adopted the changes to the public comment review section. And next we have county manager report, Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item we have a resolution. As you all know, February is observed as nationally as Black History Month. So we do have a resolution Traditionally, we would encourage our citizens to participate in those related events that create a greater awareness and appreciation of the contributions made by African Americans. The recommendation would be to adopt that resolution and to designate February as Black History Month in Vance County.
Motion to approve.
The motion has been made that we approve the resolution, like it's in that, for the month of February, that's it. That's perfect. Thank you, all those in favor.
All right.
Any opposition? I have it. I'll let you know, resolution, okay.
Next item, the state basically regulates the retention of records, how long we have to keep certain records. And that's the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And they have issued an updated, they have two sections. One is the local government agencies' general records, and the second one is the program records, retention and disposition schedule, according to state law. And so what we would be doing would be approving those updated schedules, so that then we're able to comply with the state law, basically, as far as how we destroy or otherwise dispose of those items. If you ever look at those schedules, they detail it out by department and the types of records that you keep and how long you have to keep them. And so the recommendation would be to approve the October 1st, 2021 general records and program records retention and disposition schedule.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Daniel votes aye, so there has been
Next item is just for your information around the planning retreat, and want to publicize this. We have scheduled the planning retreat for Wednesday, March 8th. And that would be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Perry Memorial Library. As far as the agenda and the plan, during the morning between 9 and 12, we'll have a board training with establishing a high performing board and working together. That would be again the morning, and then we'll have lunch in the early afternoon. We'll have the finance and budget review, and then later in the afternoon we'll do our goals prioritization. And so we are asking each commissioner if you will submit. I think we've sent it out previously. We've given it to you again tonight, but we're asking for up to 3 goals that we can take and put a part of the prioritization process. So we're going to be bugging you and bothering you with that so we can get those in time to make sure we turn it around for the retreat. So that's for your information. We are beginning budget work tomorrow. And so we're going to be, we've been gathering that information now over the last month. Tomorrow, we're going to start sitting down with department heads and going through it. So we're going to have a pretty busy month of February, but that will allow us to give you a better picture of where we are when we get together at the retreat in terms of budget and potential budget impacts for the coming year. So that planning retreat is coming. So.
We will open to the public, so if there's anyone who would like to attend, the video will be doing.
Perry Memorial Library in the Farm Bureau room. Last item we have on on the manager's report here is regarding the jail inspection report. As you know, the state inspects at a minimum of 2 times a year. They did that back in November. And so what we've presented to you is the corrective action plan that the jail staff has put together. Many of the items, there are a lot of items in that jail inspection report, but in talking with the jail staff, a lot of those are in process or fixed, but there are some major items there, the replacement of the camera system and the intercom system, which they intend to ask for as a part of the budget process next year. So just to put that on your radar. They are in the process of replacing the security doors. They have done 9 of the 10 doors in dorm B and 7 of the 10 in dorm C, and that was as of last week. Coming up under the finance director's report, the next item, you'll see that there's a request from the sheriff for a budget amendment of $144,000. That will be to move inmates to other facilities around the state. And so that door project can be completed. And so you'll be talking about that in just a minute. We have worked with Mosley Architects. That's the firm that's doing the jail facilities study. And they have made a recommendation that we passed on to the sheriff and the jail staff around trying to get a contractor or someone that could come in and try to do more of a holistic approach to try to knock out some of these items that are on the jail inspection report. That will come at cost. And so we'll have to come back and talk about the cost of that later, but they are working and have done a walkthrough of the facility and are trying to get that going. But again, the big items for next year's budget, we know are the camera system and the intercom system, as far as what we're told from the jail administrator. So the whole idea of sharing this, it's required that we share this semi-annual report with you. As you know, the sheriff oversees the day-to-day of the jail, but you all, from a budget standpoint, it keeps you informed from that standpoint of what needs to be done at the jail. And so the recommendation would be for you to act to receive that report as information.
We have, here. I would like to, during this person, I myself took a visit down to the jail and I was not just what I saw. When we had our meeting last month, the question was put to the sheriff about his request that we have to field his ongoing request when he appeared before us for funding. However, there is, according to this inspection report, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So we do have the jail administrator here tonight. You would like to address the board, this is about the things we can do. So if not, then that's fine. So it's up to you.
Was any of these items already on the last inspection report we got, not a concern to be fixed? Was any of these items on the last inspection report?
Yeah, I think a number of them, there's extra ones on this one, but yeah, several of those, some of them are staffing related, the various rounds that they're required to do. But yeah, a good number of them have been on there. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing you on the floor for us to speak. Just like Commissioner Payne, a lot of those things are on the previous report, and we do appreciate you all working with us. This is an ongoing problem. Staffing is one of the main concerns. And of course, Commissioner Payne, so you came there and you viewed and you saw the issues and the problems that we do have at our County Detention Center. I rely on Major here and Miss Somerville to keep up with my day-to-day activities, and they're doing a good job and informing Miss Bigelow and County Manager Jordan McMillan. We do have some serious issues, serious concerns, but what we're trying to do today is meet the minimum requirements. Even if most architect come here and you all agree to build a new detention center, I know it's not going to happen immediately. But today we got to work forward in meeting the minimum requirements required by the state of North Carolina for the safety of our staff and the inmates in our detention center.
Good evening, everyone. How y'all doing?
Last question also, okay, for the maintenance in the budget, you have a maintenance, maintenance budget for maintenance.
We do. Yes, ma'am.
So what does that, of all of these items that here, why, if it was on the last inspection report, I'm just wondering why has it been already worked on by now? That's why.
The maintenance, you got to realize this person is someone that, just like we have here at the county courthouse or the county building. As Jordan spoke of, County Commissioner Jordan McMillan spoke of, we need a team of people to come in there and correct the problems that we have. This didn't just happen overnight, Commissioner Payne. This has been an ongoing problem in the deterioration of that facility. Anytime you have concrete, moisture, and steel,
buildings are going to deteriorate, and that's what's happening to our facilities. And the person we have as a maintenance person is not qualified to do the things required by certain things that need to be done to be brought us up to regulations and according to the inspectors. He's qualified to do certain things, a little electrical, painting, cleaning, but we need a crew that can come in there and strip those floors. We can go over there and paint over top of them, and we're gonna have the same problem 30 days from today. Yes. I understand, and to honestly tell you what, I do not know why, ma'am. I know we've been faced with many challenges since 2019. We've gotten behind the 8 ball, and these are some things that we've got to address.
To answer your question, ma'am, part of my arrival, we did not have no preventative maintenance plan. Since, I'm sorry. My name is Brian Johnson. I'm the major at the detention center. So what I've done is every time we complete a project, for example, we've replaced hot water heaters, 3. Now, what we've got in plan now is to conduct biannual preventive maintenance, flushing those hot water heaters, getting that sediment out. We've had none of that stuff prior to my arrival, other than the generator test. Yes, ma'am. I've been there since April 11th of 2022. Oh, several, yes, ma'am.
Well, jail report.
Just about everything I've identified has been in the jail report. Yes, ma'am, with the exception of a few here and there. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, at your request last week, I visited, was able to tour it with Major Johnson. And there are a lot of concerns that most of them are on this report. But I think we need to look at doing this in some format that is more concise and that limits the amount of time that we've got people out. We currently do not have the staffing at the jail to perform all the maintenance things, nor the expertise, as the sheriff said. And so we need to do something different. And one thing I asked Major Johnson to look into, and don't know if he's had an opportunity yet, was to look at other jails that are similar age and similar capacity as ours and see if they have maintenance programs and if our budgets are actually adequate for that. And then to maybe look at some contracting, some services so that we have more strict standards on what needs to be done.
So I'm just saying, we got them done for maintenance, but why have it has not been done by now with the professional user, not with the inside crew. I understand what you're saying. I understand we need to get it done, but if it's been an ongoing situation, why haven't the contractors do these work from the maintenance budget?
May I?
Yeah.
One of the main reasons was because we've got our populations up there so much, you cannot bring a contractor in to perform the work, to do the work that needs to be done. With the maintenance guy, he is able to go in there and do what we can around the inmate population. Therefore, that's why we're looking at, we bring in a crew, Bordeaux Construction, like you instruct me to do. They came in and did a walkthrough, and they're coming through again Wednesday at 9 o'clock to do another walkthrough. But with the construction coming in, they'd be able to come in and complete everything at one time, where I only have one gentleman doing all the work. Oh. Pardon me?
Where have you been with the money to fix the, what ain't been fixed that you actually have?
For the history of the Vance County Sheriff Office, I know they have a maintenance budget, but we've never had a outside crew to come in and do regular preventive maintenance. I've only been sheriff for 4 years. Like I said, we're facing challenges and we usually don't know something until it breaks. And then we go out and try to repair. And like Major just said here, that jail so poorly designed. If we had a crew to come in, they couldn't work because of the population and we have nowhere to house inmates. That's why we're coming asking for this extra amount of dollars to move these inmates to another facility so they can go in and do dorm by dorm and get this job completed, hopefully within 60 days. Sure. Yes. Did I hear him just say that they just started in April
Yes, sir.
of this year?
Yes, sir.
It looks like to me you've got somebody in that and we'll still the maintenance schedule and this is where you're gonna start doing one. Am I listening to, did I hear that?
He's doing a great job. You know, he's bringing a lot to the table, his experience working on the federal level. He sees a lot of things that I did not see. And I think he's gonna be an asset of Vance County and Vance
Looks like
County.
he would be great to work with as far as coming up with a plan for the future and work with the county manager.
We're working on that, Commissioner.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. And glad to have you on board.
Glad to be here.
Different issues, what corrective measures that you all put in place to ensure that this inspection, what, the violations are going to be corrected and going forward, that there will be corrective action taken on many of the things that need to be done.
I'm still working on these process. I'm still painting C dorm, but as soon as the project gets done, I am putting in place procedures to conduct biannual inspections on the doors, on the camera systems, on the intercom systems, on the hot water heaters. Until we get something in place to do these preventive maintenance check, either with an outside vendor or with a maintenance guy, they're going to continue to break. And this, from my experience, from what I've seen here, that hasn't been put in place other than the generators.
Well, it's my understanding we do have a service contract on the new HVAC units we put in. Is that correct?
With rains, yes.
So that's some new equipment. We spent a substantial amount of money and there is a maintenance contract on that equipment.
And it's the same thing goes with the hot water heaters. I'm sorry, man. With the hot water heaters, with Hart Plumbing coming in, they've agreed to us on a preventive maintenance to come in and check those hot water heaters on a biannual basis, flush them out if need be, make sure they're vented out properly, make sure they're at the proper temperature. But these are things we're doing as I'm replacing them.
One person doing maintenance, getting additional work through
Hopefully, we can find someone to have a contractor, outside vendor with a multiple people come in, do a clean sweep and recognize and report back those things that need to be corrected. That's something we're working on collectively, yes. One, yes. But we have a part-time who's working through a staffing agency. He's been on what, about 6 weeks?
About 2 months.
Yeah, about 2, yes.
What I'm hearing there, let me just make sure I understand what Carolyn had just asked and everything. You're having a maintenance budget in order to do, but Mr. Johnson or Jackson?
Johnson, yes, sir.
Johnson, in your experience in terms of looking at what's there, the things that need to be done, can they be covered out of regular maintenance budget?
Yes, sir, once I get it corrected, but it needs to
Once
be
you establish a priority list, they can be covered out of the maintenance budget.
with the,
So you're trying to put in place what she's saying, that things that have gone undone will now be covered out of the maintenance budget. But what I'm hearing Sheriff Brain said, a lot of those things that need to be done, you need to move the population in order to do it, right?
That's correct.
That's the problem. But that's that's not part of the maintenance budget. That winds up being something else that you come back to us to get approval, or can you do it yourself out of your budget? terms of
No,
transfer, moving.
And that's why we're here now, asking for that extra amount of dollars to house these inmates in other facilities to
But I
get
think
this,
what I'm
this
getting at, what
project
Carolyn
complete.
is saying is that you have enough money in your maintenance budget. Once he establishes a plan and priority, that those things can be taken care of. That's what she was asking, that, you know, you've got a maintenance budget, which hadn't been done before, but now that you got your maintenance budget can cover the things that need to be taken care of. You know,
By the one
top
person or by,
priority, top priority to the least priority and everything.
that maintenance budget is gonna have to change if we get a vendor outside versus one person who's working
Don't
inside.
cost you more, right?
Yes, sir.
How much is the jail budget?
How much is the jail budget? Yeah,
4.8,
yes, close to 5.
and all of it's gone.
4.8
No,
million.
so we have to remain to July the 1st. We still,
It's about 4.8 million.
And we reported last month that maintenance was around $75,000 of that.
And
Um,
out of the work that they've been asking to get done, what has actually came out of that budget? For it to be gone.
Hot water here. Cannot tell you how many gallons of paint I've got, but what you noticed that vertical in the cleaning process.
all those doors. Speaking microphones.
I'm sorry. The hot water heater, I've gotten over 100 gallons of paint, give or take a few, new ceiling tiles. I've gotten some additional pneumatic plumbing blocks. I mean, I've requested today for another hot water heater. We lost another one today.
Only thing you mentioned is hot water heating and paint, ain't there? Nothing else.
Well, I mean, that's not including the
A
doors.
whole lot of dirt.
That's not including the doors, sir.
so you'll notice 15,500 is going to be coming up for a water heater. He just said two of them. That's 30-some thousand dollars.
Hot water heaters over $10,000 a piece. Way over 10,000.
I guess the elephant in the room is we've got 50-some murders in our jail that have been there for an extended period of time, which is a difficult population to manage. And they don't seem to be getting through the system in a timely manner. And that puts a big strain on a jail.
And according to state's regulations, rules and regulations, our facility is not designed to house that many inmates who charged with that type of crimes, nor do we have the areas to isolate or segregate, depending on their classifications. If we have a COVID outbreak, we don't have a place to isolate. It's a poorly designed facility. It's very small and it's poorly designed for today's population.
County jail was not designed to hold from 2 to 7 years either.
Well, it's not on Advanced,
because in those
it's not
laws-
on Advanced County, it's across the whole state. of
We ain't
North
talking about
Carolina.
the whole state, we talking about Vance County.
Sure, I would say to you
Yes.
that if you look at statistics nationally, almost every jail in the country is overpopulated. For whatever reasons, we're not unique in that position. That's why in some states, they've started to let people out early who have crimes are so minor that they let them out early because they're now a major threat to society. So jails all over the country are overcrowded.
But we're unique to the design of the facility, Commissioner.
Well, let
We-
me tell
like
you what
I said-
let me tell you what my major concern is in this conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Faines brought it up. That's my major concern. And that is, there seems to be no system in progress that lets you identify and correct things as they emerge and come up. You send to let them just go on and on and on. And the budget, because that's her question, really, why haven't these things been corrected? And then I hear you say, well, you didn't recognize them until you got this gentleman in. They're all, you didn't recognize you had a problem until he showed up. But the point is, now that he's here, what I think you need in place is what Commissioner Frames pointed out earlier. You need some system that says we check on a daily, monthly, semi-annual basis or whatever. And then the money that we put in for maintenance, you go into that money and get it done so that we don't have this problem coming up again. The problem now is you gotta get money from the county, which is, I'm not opposed to that, to let all these inmates, take them somewhere so you can get a crew of people in there and bring the jail up to standard,
I concur with you, Colonel.
okay?
I do.
But the key is after we've done all that, if you don't do what Commissioner Fain said earlier, you're gonna be right back here in 3 years with the same problem.
I concur with you, but this didn't happen overnight. I inherited this, and we've been working on it ever since I've been sheriff. It didn't just happen in the last
No,
4 years.
but what I'm suggesting to you is you need a system in place,
I-
as Commissioner Frames pointed out, so that every year when you come here, you say, I need 75,000 or I need 100,000, whatever that number is.
I concur.
Because
I
these-
agree with
and
you.
you itemize what problems need to be fixed.
I agree with you.
And every time you done came in here, Sheriff, from my understanding, they done gave you everything you asked for, right?
But a new jail, that's all. We give you everything, but you're gonna get that.
With a new jail.
One other issue, but it's not due today.
I reserve my comment. That's correct.
Fiscal year coming up, I know your earlier comment was a lot of times you didn't know things were restricted. Until it broke. Is there any system that you then put in place so that you can do this inspection and see what's potentially gonna go bad, so that you can act for that in this coming budget, and then when it does family without being able to go into your budget to fix that problem?
If we-
You're getting worse in a worse condition than what it may already be.
If the county agrees to hire an outside vendor to do preventive maintenance,
Once they.
I think that would help us. Sir,
I apologize, go. I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
he is not an electrician. He's not a vac person. He knows how to run a detention center. I'm not either. A lot of things go on in these county buildings are fine until they break down. So if we can have someone do preventive maintenance, who can come in and evaluate our facility on a monthly or bi-monthly basis and see what needs to be repaired. And I think it would assist us a whole lot.
Am I misunderstanding something, Curtis? Let me ask you this. That's not what he's supposed to be doing for you? He's not doing that. He's not going, are you supposed to be doing that? Looking at,
He's supposed to be
okay, let me make a point to you and everything, Curtis. As as sheriff, you can't do everything.
That's correct.
So you delegate to him to do what needs to be done.
That's correct.
Once you delegate to him what needs to be done, then he feeds that up to you, and then you work out a plan to get it done. That's all you got to do now. That's what you need to do. So going forward, I think that what I'm hearing, you're putting in place a plan to do it. Whether or not it means getting an outside contractor to do this, or whether or not whether or not the people that we have doing maintenance can do certain ones, but he's gonna put in place for you a plan. He feeds that up to you. Your job be to get it done.
I understand what you're saying, but he has no business of knowing what. If he walks up on the roof and inspects 15 HVAC units, he wouldn't know what he was looking
I'm
at.
not saying he know how to do, Curtis. You get somebody to do it. He's gonna say. it needs
And
to
that's
be
what he's
done.
been doing,
And
sir.
he's gonna he's gonna recommend to you that you get it done, that you get it done.
And that's what Major
You
Shelton,
don't know everything. I don't know everything. He doesn't know.
that's correct. That's what Major Shelton was doing before he left. That's why we started the project with the doors. And he's finishing it up.
This process is not unlike what we did with the Dennis building. It's not unlike what we've done with this building by putting new windows and new units and new roofs and all on it. We deferred maintenance for a number of years when the economy was tight, and now we're paying the price. And that's just part of it.
It's part of, that's part
And,
of it.
and this is just another part
Dan,
of it.
I don't know if I agree with what you said 100%, in the sense that we didn't defer anything. The sheriff never came and asked for anything. We gave him, as he said, what he asked for, we didn't defer. He may have deferred by not asking, but
We've taken
No,
the
that's up
buildings,
to him.
we've taken the buildings one at a time and we've.
I
got them
understand
back
all
up
that.
to
Yeah, we
speed.
got that.
This happens to be probably time for this building to receive some attention. And it
Well-
needs a lot of attention.
Let me tell you what my concern is with this discussion. My concern now is that we're gonna give you the money to move 144,000, whatever.
Yes,
Move the inmates out so that you can get some people in there to do the work.
that's
right?
correct.
You know what my concern is?
What's that?
That you won't have all the work covered. Because you don't know everything that needs to be done. And you're gonna have all these people out of there. And now you're gonna get a contractor in there. He's gonna do all this maintenance stuff. Then they're gonna go back in and you're gonna say, oh, we just discovered that we need dum, 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 dum. And now you're gonna.
Because you're dealing with an old building that needs to be pushed down.
But
Yes,
no,
you're
my
gonna
point-
continue
my-
to run into these. No, you sit up here
My
saying,
point is
no,
that
you sit up
need
here saying that we
to
may.
understand what you need
No,
to
you need to
understand.
understand.
You need to identify upfront all of the things that need to be done before we get these people out, so that when you get somebody in there,
Colonel, that's,
they can get
that's what we're
everything that
doing.
needs to be done.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, I have a question. Commissioner, Sheriff, I have a question
Yes, sir.
for the major. I have a question for the major.
Go ahead.
Do you have a list of what needs to be done when you move these inmates out?
Yes, sir.
Do you got it in a piece of paper in your hand?
I don't, I got it in my head, sir.
Well, let's,
Oh, no, that won't work.
no, okay.
I need a new roof. The roof is leaking. The floor on the walk-in cooler is rotted. And then when you walk in on the walk-in cooler, you sink.
That's true.
I need the ceiling tiles and the grids. I think they're called grids. They need to be replaced because the kitchen has not been operating their exhaust vents. Therefore, it's building up moisture and it rust, possible mold. I got to remove the mold in the dorms. I have to strip the floors. I got to paint the cells. I got to get a camera system. I have to get the two-way remote communication from the inmate cells into the booth.
Have you put this in your budget that you turned into the sheriff?
Sir, yes, sir.
Have the sheriff turned that budget in?
I can't speak on that.
What,
Commissioner Taylor, Commissioner Austin, working on an old building, and Mr. Brumman can tell you, he's a contractor. You're working on an old building, you never know what you're gonna run into when you're remodeling or renovating. We're gonna run into some issues that we may have to come back and ask for funding for. We don't know what's behind the paint. We don't know what's behind when we get to digging into something. We don't know it all. We only can tell you what's face value, what we see by standing and observing.
when I went through the facility last week with the major, we talked about bringing in a professional to do a sale by sale look at the building, identify all the things that were necessary. There's some doors that were ordered wrong with the door replacement. Go ahead and get that company to measure the doors so that we know somebody who's responsible for those doors if they're the wrong size. And we discussed a lot of those things. And so the major's in the process of identifying those things
That's what
with a professional construction company. I told him that I'd be happy to walk through and get the process, facilitate some of it. But in the end, we need a professional company to go in there and identify these things so that when we hit day one, when the inmates leave, this company is on a performance contract. You've got 60 days to get it. If you don't do it in 60 days, then you're going to pay a per diem. If you get through with it in 45 days, the money we save by not having the inmates out, that may be a performance bonus. So that it's done in a professional manner. And, we can't just paint over old epoxy paint. It's got to be scraped and etched and everything else so that it will go back and stay for a while. So it'll be more cost than just patching it, but in the long term, it ought to be done well.
Well,
We've had this.
You're on to what I'm talking about.
I've had that.
Professional in there and go over the whole thing, take a professional look at everything that needs to be done so that when they get in there, they fix everything one time.
And that's the conversation I had with the major when I went in there last week. So he's well aware of that and he's working on that.
And that was done, and they're returning again Wednesday at 9 o'clock to do another walkthrough.
My concern, can everything be done, Dan, in 60 to 90 days? As he looked to identify things, I just think you hamper yourself in terms of saying it's gonna get done in a certain period of time. There's certain things that need to be done. You do this, this at certain times and everything.
I believe the sheriff has spoken with the door contractor. The door contractor is probably the most intensive part of the work that needs to be done.
Okay.
We need to make sure that we've got the doors on hand. In addition to that, some of the cell gates are not functioning properly and either need new motors or the motors need to be rebuilt. So some of those things also, those things can take a little time. You need to make sure you got the parts before you start the process, and then you go from there. Where they're scratching out the windows and trying to bust out windows, we need to put some extended panels around those so they can't get to the soft part of the block. Where they're hiding phones in the ceilings, we need to do some reinforced things with that. So there are a number of issues, and these have all been identified, and they will continue to be identified. But as the sheriff said, when you go in an old building, you may start etching the concrete and it may dissolve in front of you. Then you gotta, go back and regroup.
Like, just talking about the cafeteria and everything, needs,
Well, that area there, I mean, I think they've sent the returns out for cleaning and service. But now I'm hoping that exhaust unit's running about all
Talking
the
about
time.
the kitchen?
Yes,
No, it's been taken down. I'm waiting to get a power or degrease and power wash and clean after Bordeaux walked through last week. The ceiling vent, the exhaust,
we had them all taken out.
yeah, they recommended it be replaced. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, all those things there.
it could be done. Are you feeding the folks in the kitchen now?
Well, I'll be honest there. I've got a couple of thoughts, but I have not run them by the sheriff as far as what we could do. I do have a plan or two, but I had to run by the sheriff
I
first.
think that the kitchen there, you can make on the kitchen and everything.
Bordeaux Construction, even our maintenance guys said they could probably do that work in a week, but it would require either food being brought in or another vendor or something like that for about a week. Yes, sir.
Has any of those been done? The reason I asked because I was in conversation with Sheldon before he left. And I was told that he was already in the transition of the doors he had told me he had gotten money, the doors was gonna be put in. And this was way before he left.
The doors was purchased, brought to the detention center and put there. And then, of course, with COVID and not having the space to go to work.
Because
Yeah.
they had already told me where certain people were going because I was in conversation with them.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I'm kind of.
And then some of the doors were the wrong size, so we've been into a big problem with doors being the wrong. Yeah. Yeah, they were ordered, brought there, but it had not been installed.
Additionally, we've had to segregate populations with some of the COVID outbreak, a number of things that have happened in those times that just made the facility a zoo.
I'm just asking to see if any door.
Yes, some doors have been installed. Yes.
How many more doors y'all have left?
So B dorm's completely done with the exception of one. C dorm's got 7 cells on. I'm waiting on 3. Nothing done with A and D.
How many is in A and D?
10 apiece.
10, so that's
Sure.
23 so far.
And then we have to order the exterior doors that would go out, the emergency doors. They need to be replaced. And then you had 4 additional doors that were not ordered, of which I think you have 2 that are wrong sizes that you can replace those with.
Correct.
And so those doors need to be ordered and put in place.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So is the roof leaking over any of the jail cells?
Not over the jails. Well, inside the day room. Yes, sir. They're coming down through the lights. So I got some leaks.
So, but not in the individual cell.
Has not been reported to me. No, sir. Just in the day room.
What's the age of the roof?
According to Bordeaux Construction, it looks like it's been it's the original roof. That's why they're coming back again to look at it.
Original.
Well, that was from the 87, 88. Is that one?
90. He's guessing 90, 91, 92.
91, 92. Okay.
That's what he's guessing. Yes, sir.
Okay.
He's coming back Wednesday to take another look at it, to make
Oh.
sure.
Okay, I think we are
Okay.
at a consensus where we all agree that there's work for everyone to do, including, the sheriff, to make sure that the work is getting done and that it's being properly reported, so we can know what to ask for in the budget. And then once we become aware of what really needs to be done, then we can make decisions accordingly. I think, one of the main problems with what I'm hearing is that additional funding is going to be needed to take care of all of the things that you're asking for. So we want to know before we fund those things that the money is going to be put to the proper use, that we're giving these funds for. So my question, to you, Sheriff, have you made any arrangements thus far to put out any requests for contractors to maybe give that preliminary, assessment of what needs to be done and what it will cost in terms of the major functions of the jail, electric, any plumbing issues, any roof issues, and so forth?
Major's handling all the logistics regarding to the request and getting people here to do assessments and get prices and whatnot. But the funding we're asking for tonight is to move these inmates so we can get started on that project.
Are we gonna have a plan before, well, I tell you, I guess right now, Madam Chair, what we need to do is close off this section. We need to move to accept the jail inspection report.
Before you do that, can I ask one question?
Well, the next section will deal with this financing and all this.
Ain't got nothing to do with the finance. I just have one question. When you had made a statement on the news that you knew that your employees was bringing contraband into the sheriff department. But when we did our walkthrough, we had a $500,000 machine down there that they won't use.
Cannot.
I'm trying to figure out, you go through the airport, they gotta go through it. When you go in the courthouse, they gotta go through a machine. So
You can walk through a metal detector, but that is an X-ray machine. It's very intrusive, very invasive of a person, individual.
well, we did it and you couldn't tell if it was a male or
Well,
female.
I think that's a question for our county attorney to force employees to go through an X-ray machine. Every sheriff I talk to that has that Tech 84 machine, every sheriff, they do not send their employees through that. They have them walk through a common area, walk through a metal detector like they come in the courthouse, but to be X-rayed, that's very intrusive.
But it was kind of, oh, I'm sorry.
It was purchased for the inmates. Male and female inmates can go through it.
But an employee can't.
And no.
That don't make sense.
Well, unless you want a lawsuit, you thinking about a lawsuit. so-
How's that a lawsuit?
For the record, I've never been consulted or discussed this at all with the sheriff.
Say, ho. Say it again.
Hey,
I've
he has
never,
not.
I've never been consulted or discussed this at all with the sheriff, so I'm not aware of the issues.
What it is, county attorney, it's an X-ray machine. I mean, it's more intrusive as an X-ray machine like it is at a hospital.
Sheriff, this is not the time or the place or the appropriate
I understand.
time to
We'll
discuss.
we'll leave that conversation alone. Yes, sir.
Oh, you know.
Madam Chair, may we receive the jail report?
How does he plan to handle it? Wait, what's the motion here?
Receive the jail report. Jail
Oh,
inspection
yeah.
report.
All those in favor?
All right.
Any nays?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes the manager's
Madam Chair,
report.
can I ask one question about this movement of it's 144? I know we're not discussing it tonight.
No, we're coming
But-
to that in a
I'll come
second.
into that. It's next, it's a third item on the agenda.
Oh, okay, well,
The
I'll
finance.
wait till we get to it.
So, Madam Chair, if we can, so that's the end of the manager's report, transitioning to the finance director's report. But while we're talking about this, if you want to handle these two issues, we can talk through the jail issues, items C and D under the finance director's report, and we'll continue that conversation. So.
Well, we'll just skip to C. The detention center cell door project is underway. We need $144,000 to move the inmates. You see the recommendation below from the staff. Sure. Yes, ma'am, I apologize.
I guess my question on this is if we proceed right now with finishing up the doors before we have an action plan for the rest of it, we're gonna have to move the inmates twice. Because we don't have with the painting and all these other repairs that are gonna be done, what kind of time frame are you looking at to be able to complete the other repairs in conjunction with the doors? I know the sheriff and I had a conversation, and I believe they said they could do the doors within 60 days.
Okay. That's stated, I would prefer we follow the agenda and let, I don't recommend to do A and B. And that when you got A and B out, which deals with surplus properties, partners in the repair, which should be relatively quick.
Yes, ma'am. The cooperative extension has 3 file cabinets and 2 typewriters that have not been used in over 5 years that I would like to declare surplus property. The property has already been removed and replaced.
Second.
And then probably move the second that we discuss surplus property and equipment. About the finance director, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries.
The county's fire engine number 2 is in need of significant repair to replace the water pump system and the air compressor or dryer for the air brake system, totaling approximately 42,000. The funds are not available in the current fire year department budget. The engine serves as a critical primary backup when engine 1 or engine 3 is out of service. Staff recommends allocating the funds from this fund balance for this repair. Staff is aware of also the guidelines from the National Fire Protection Association that recommends cycling engines out after 25 years of service.
Madam Chair, I think in conversation this morning with the county manager, he believes that there may be funds in other parts of the budget, just moving from a line item and not having to go to the general fund for that. In addition to that, just of note, we are not subject to the National Fire Protection Association rules, only recommendations. So when we go to talking about putting an engine in the capital improvement plan, that's something for another conversation. But I would move that we transfer funds from another line item to replace the compressor dryer for the fire engine.
Yes, sir.
You know, thing we did discuss, if we go ahead and do that now. Because this would be according to information, given by the county manager.
Just to clarify what we're talking about. So we believe we could use some funds within the fire department budget. We'll call it lap salaries, whatever. I know I'm not allowed to say that, but essentially, we can find these funds within the budget. We just don't have it in the automobile replacement line item. So we wouldn't have to take it out of fund balance.
I have a question before y'all make that recommendation. I have a question, educational question for me. I'm not quite got the understanding of these budgets yet. But at the end of the year or close to the end of the year, how all these budgets is empty? And y'all got to move this or move that. I'm confused.
So we're conservative.
Yeah,
What you call it?
we budget very conservatively, but it's fairly common as you get into the new year that now that you are taking funds and moving them. Yes. Now I will say we are now feeling the impacts of increased prices. And when we budgeted last year, we did not budget for the increased prices that we're seeing. And so, yeah, these automobile types of things, yeah, we're seeing it, the impact of it now. You can speak to that too. But you typically will see more budget amendments as you get into the spring and as you start to close out the year. I don't like having to bring these this early though.
But this is an unforeseen repair.
Well,
that-
let me ask the question. The motion is to find the funds somewhere else in the budget. Is that
Just
the motion?
reallocate it from
Not
that line
take it out
item.
of the fund balance. but
Correct.
Find the monies. Is that the motion?
And that's per conversation with the county
I got
manager.
that part, but
Yes,
that's the motion.
that's the motion.
I second that motion. Let's move on.
We transfer the funding for the fire engine repair, all those in favor?
All right.
All those opposed? That was vote,
This is my third meeting, and every meeting is something different.
Yeah, and
But it's a good observation because in some instances, some departments and some institutions try to spend extra monies at the end of the year to keep their budget to a certain level. That's not the case that's going on here. So it's a good observation.
Goes on all over, and it goes on to the national government. The Pentagon is the same way.
Okay, now it's on the line item C
Yeah.
on the agenda 7C, and now that the jail make inmate pay keeping budget. We have flow.
I guess, Madam Chair, we'll go back to the point of the timing and being able to accomplish all these in one move rather than having to do twice. Could you speak to that?
Yes, sir. I think it allowed the opportunity to move two dorms. I already got one completed. If I can move another dorm, the work can be completed within a 60-day period, depending upon the nature of the work, like the walk-in cooler floor or the roof. But as far as where the inmate population lives, that 60 days is sufficient to get the work completed. Yes, sir.
Do you have that lined up currently? I mean, you said you were meeting Bordeaux again. Okay, is this is the amount of this going to be something that has to be bidded?
We're currently working on this up right now. As you witnessed last week, we're doing the painting. We're doing what we can do right now, given the inmate population.
Because I think what's going to end up happening, the amount of the repairs are going to be in an amount that's going to require the project to be bid out. So then you're going to have to go through a bidding process, which would take 3 weeks to a month. And so that would be a time, and then you accept the bids, and then whoever gets the bids has got to get the materials and have those ready. So if we just say tonight, we're going to approve $144,000 to move the inmates, and you move them next week, then we're going to turn around in 60 days and we're going to move them again.
No, sir. What I'm asking for with that time frame within that 6 days is just everything pertaining around where the inmates live, where they reside. That way I don't have to worry about working around the inmates. I don't have to worry about moving the inmates to fix the roof or to fix hot water heaters or to fix the plumbing pneumatics. That's all out of the way. I need the time to do the painting, replacing the cell doors, working on the two-way communication system, anything that's surrounded around the inmate population. We're doing that right now, ma'am. We're doing the painting right now with the
Okay,
maintenance
but the
guy.
painting you're doing now,
Yes, the
you're not-
doors.
you're not doing in a proper manner, and it's going to peel off in 6 months. So
I guess what you're saying, we're not gonna move the inmates until we got people in place, until we got contractors ready to move. So we have a date. Yeah, I mean, we're working on, it, but we need to get the funding secured. So once we get the funding secured and we get the contractor secured, and then we'll say, hey, we're gonna start this day and we got 60 days to do it. Will that day start next week or 3 weeks from now?
I think there's
We
consensus.
don't have a beginning date if that's what you're
I
asking.
think there's consensus in this board that we're going to support moving the inmates to get this accomplished.
Yes.
Would it be better to handle all of this at the same time?
Yes,
We
sir.
do the bid and just do one motion for one budget amendment to do the whole project.
And I understand what you're saying. If it's a certain amount, we had to do a bidding process. So yeah, whatever date we chose, we're gonna have set 60 days from that date.
Well, let me, yeah, I'm exactly where he is. I tell you.
Yes, sir.
That was the question I was going to ask earlier.
Yeah, we all with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question earlier, so I'm glad he brought it up. I think what you need from us tonight, and you can, commissioners, correct me if I'm wrong, you just need to know that we will commit to fund the movement of prisoners at the appropriate time.
At the appropriate
Don't
time,
need
yes.
to vote on any money tonight, because once you get all the bids in, you look at everything that has to be done, and then you brought up the fact that you don't know what's going to happen because it's old and things might go wrong,
Yes, sir.
and it may take more time than you think.
Yes.
And so, to me, we just will commit that we will support funding the movement of prisoners when that time comes. But we don't need to vote tonight that we're gonna give you $144,000.
I agree.
There'll be money, additional money that we need.
I
to
understand.
do
Yes,
those
I
other
understand
things.
what you're saying.
Support whatever that is. when it
That's
comes.
all I need to know, that you all going to support us. 'Cause
Yeah,
I mean, because the contracts may come in and say, well, this is a bigger problem, I think. It may take 75 days.
right. It might take 75 days. It might.
We can handle that. We can handle that.
think you all are, if you're gonna support the move, you know, because you do understand the necessity.
Okay.
Move the inmates of this work can be done. However, before doing that, we wanna make sure that there's a plan in place.
Yes.
So that we have a certain date in which we know, the inmates will be moved such and such a date, they're gonna be gone this amount of time, and then we can determine what amount you're gonna need. Instead of you having to come, say for instance, to give you the 140 something, you can approve that. And then it turns out it'll take 90 days, and you're gonna have to come back here, ask for money for another 30 days, and then longer than that, you understand what I'm saying? Because we have a clear idea, and as Mr. Brummer stated, we already have put into that contract that this person will be penalized if he does not fulfill his contract. Or he will get a bonus if he does do it early, because that way we're saving money, then we know how much exactly we want to.
I agree.
And, you know, and I think all of us.
I agree.
Same page in terms of that, but, so I would recommend that we just, table the, jail safety until such time as it's gonna be approved, but today, it's not needed today, so you don't even have a plan in place as to who you gonna get to do the work, when you gonna get the work done, and how long it's really gonna take to do the work. And as you say, he's not a contractor, he's not an electrician, he's not a plumber, and you need all those things, and you need to come to us once you get a figure and tell us, we need this amount to complete this work according to the. And I think that would work for this board, you know, rather than just saying, we anticipate we might need this. You know, we don't need 60 days, because that 60 days is just a number, I think we just throw it up in the air. Mr. Drummond is the contractor, and he can't even say it's gonna take 60 days. So, and
Hey.
now, how long has the women been gone? Remember, you told us last month, the women had already been moved, how long have they been?
What? About 2 months.
That's 50 days.
Yes.
If you didn't finish that, you could be still locked in the 50 days. So what makes you think you can finish all the rest of it? Do you see my point?
I see the roadblocks, and I understand.
Um,
Yeah, we're gonna give you the money. Don't even move them.
Thank you.
so, you know,
Not much.
So no, you're gonna table it.
we're gonna table this.
Madam Chair, just to kind of add to the complexity of this conversation. I appreciate the perspective. We don't want to pay for it twice, and that's our concern too. I think the major's concern is he's trying to get the doors done. And he wants to get those doors done now as opposed to, and probably could get them done now versus 60 days. But I agree with you, you'll pay for it twice. You'll pay for it now, but the doors are the most critical piece that he's trying to get done. Yes, the painting needs to be done right. But the critical part, and he can maybe share that a little bit. I'm not recommending that you do anything different than what you've just done. I'm just saying that I can see that the major's concern is the doors, and that's really what he's trying to get done with it.
I have a question. Before we finish. How long can an inmate stay on lockdown?
23 hours a day,
Got to come out for 1 hour.
1 hour.
And how long do it take to put a door on?
How long would it take to put a door on?
Mr. Solomons completed a one-hole dorm with the exception of the missed measurements in 1 week, 4 days.
4 days to put on one door?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was the whole dorm. He completed the whole dorm in 4 days, with the exception of the mismeasured doors. Oh, a couple hours.
And I see what county manager's talking about, critical, having these doors installed, but I'll see what County Commissioner Brumman is saying. While we got this cell block, let's finish it from A to Z. Let's include painting it, and peeling it, fixing the windows and everything. We got to do everything in one, because if we spend $140,000, I see what y'all say, if we spend $140,000 for this 6 weeks, then we got to spend another $140,000 and move them again. Because we cannot go in there and complete the rest of the work while the inmates in sales. The dorms have to be free of inmates for them to go in there and complete all the work that needs to be done.
Who,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
It's.
Well, like the county manager said, it's complex. It is. It's no easy task.
if
I'm not
it
advocating for spending the money twice.
Yeah.
I like
takes,
spending it
if it
once.
takes 4 days to do one door,
Just a door only.
Huh?
10 doors.
to do one
4
door,
days, In 10 days, to do 10 doors.
okay.
4 days.
So, but you keep them locked down 23 hours a day, right? So could we keep them locked down? While you do
You got the doors off.
The doors
You
off.
lock 'em
You
off.
can't keep them like that.
one door at a time, right?
No, sir.
You can't have them in there with general population.
With all of.
The tools they have, you can't.
That's what I was asking.
No, you can't.
That's
do
what
it.
I was
The
asking.
dorm has to be cleared, completely clear.
It's a security hazard, sir, because all the tools, the welding, the cutting and the grinding, I'm looking at a security hazard.
And the safety hazard. Having exhaust fans for the.
That's what I was
I'm
asking.
still back to the thing in terms of doors and everything. The doors, you want to get them moved, you want to get them out so you can do the doors. Based on what we were saying in terms of not wanting to spend the money twice, how is it that we cannot delay the doors until you find out, till you get estimates and contracts to do the other work you want to do?
Well, that's
So-
what we're talking about in a whole
So
now.
if you can get that, then you delay the doors, and what we're saying, delay the door, the installation of the doors, then everything else that you need to take to get done, you get a contract as to how long it's going to take and when it's going to take. Like we said, we don't oppose that, but at the same time, you want to get the doors done now. But let's not spend the money twice. Get all the things that need to be done while the inmates are out, including the doors, and we'll be through with it.
That's the plan.
We'll be through with it and everything. So don't start the work on the doors and then move the inmates, then come back and say, now we got to do this other work, spend another $160,000. So I'm just saying, look at what needs to be done when they're out and see how much it can be done in 60 days. It'd be like Yolanda said, it may need to be 90 days. Who knows?
And see, until we start working on doors, we didn't realize we had all the other problems.
Well, that's why you got
That's
me, okay?
Okay. When he gets the number. That's all we're at. I think everybody's on the same page right now.
Yeah.
So we can stop talking about this tonight and move on.
And I can go
I
home.
agree.
Wait, I need to know about the water.
Well,
Huh?
Yeah, we
The
got
water
that
heater,
water
that's,
heater.
that's item D. That's different.
That's number D.
Go ahead.
Number D.
Over, B dorm needs a new water heater. Staff recommendation is below to approve 15,500 to be able to replace it.
Move for approval of budget amendment 28 for the water heater.
Second.
It's been properly moved and.
What's his name? What's his?
Thank you.
Ah,
Aye.
Catherine, you got there without a lot of,
Good night, sir.
good night. Thank you, Mr. John. Thank you.
Okay, next we have.
I'm hungry.
All right, this evening we have a initial offer for your consideration, a lot on Elsie Street. The offer is, the minimum amount of our offer is $750.
What? 100 and what?
$750.
Oh, $750. So
That's a 0.3 acres, I believe. Somewhere in that range, 0.36 or something like that. Madam Chair, I move that we initiate the process for LC Street lot.
The Elton Street lot, that's what you probably. Any opposed? All approved, say aye.
all right.
Aye.
And property, Move second, unanimous vote for approval, so it passed. The next consent agenda.
I make a motion to
Madam
accept the-
Chair, before,
Well,
I've got
you got a
one other option, one other resolution. This is a matter that this board has already previously voted on and approved the agreement to sell and purchase the real estate. There's general statutes require a formal resolution, and after this, a publication in the newspaper. I got word this morning from the buyer's attorney that they have completed title work and are ready to move this to the next step and move forward. And so this is a formal process, that a resolution that needs to be approved to comply with the general statutes.
Move for approval, resolution authorizing the sale of real property at Red Creek Road Building.
Second.
The properly moved and seconded by Commissioners Thomas and Kelly. If you adopt the resolution, all those in favor?
All right.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Next is consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
A motion has been properly made that we adopt the consent agenda. And seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? By unanimous vote approval. Okay, Kelly.
Yes, we have appointments for the month. For the Henderson Planning Board, reappoint Arnold Bullock. The Henderson Zoning Board of Adjustments, reappoint Arnold Bullock and Jean Askew. And the Vance County Planning Board, reappoint Mitch Wyatt and Phyllis Steinbeck.
Move for approval of all appointments as read.
Properly moved, and seconded that we approve the appointment, all those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it, so we go 27. The last item on the agenda is the closed section of the legal matter.
I'm going to close session.
Motion has been made and seconded that we go into closed session.
Madam Chair, do we anticipate any act?
Do anticipate action on our return. I think.
We had voted. We haven't voted.
Okay, all in favor of going into closed session?
Aye.
Any opposition? So we move, it has been moved.